It's really.
In the beating heart of Bromsgrove live the Salangis.
Nizam and Zubaydah lived in Talbot Road in Bromsgrove. Nice estate. And it has a row of shops, and in that row of shops was Nizam and Zubaydah's takeaway pizza business, Prego Pizza. It was owned by Nizam. Zubaydah would help and serve behind the counter.
And it was plainly quite a popular place for local residents to go to.
I don't know what they did with them pizzas, but their pizzas were really nice.
Zubaydah was very attractive. I took quite a shine to her. She'd just got this aura about her which sort of drew you in with her smile.
Nizam was very talkative. We had quite a few conversations with him. They seemed a very nice couple, very pleasant.
Nizam and Zubaydah are also proud members of the local Afghan community. They have 2 young children, one 6, the other just 4 years old.
She went about her daily life as best she could, loved her kids. They were the centre of her world.
She was a devoted mother, and the family life was everything for her.
But life in Talbot Road is about to change forever.
Hello, police. Nizam contacted West Mercia Police to report Zubaydah missing.
At the time, Nizam said that his wife had gone out for a run and never returned.
Nizam also reveals something else to police.
There were a number of texts on his phone that reported to have come from Zubaydah. One which said something along the lines of, I love someone else, I want to pass my time with them. Zubaydah had left him and she had told him via text that she was going back to Afghanistan. She couldn't cope in the UK, didn't want to remain here, and of course had mentioned another man in her life.
Nizam had shown the texts to a friend at his mosque.
The gentleman concerned told Nizam that he should call the police and let them know that Zubaydah was missing, which of course he did.
But leaving her children behind seems at odds with devoted mother Zubaydah. Police launch a missing person inquiry.
Missing persons reports are taken very seriously, particularly when they are out of character. That inquiry would have been passed to a response officer via a patrol sergeant, and there are a template of inquiries that would have taken place in response to trying to find out where Zubaydah was.
The police will investigate places known to Zubaydah Salangi. So, for example, they would go to addresses that they know that she would go to. They would speak to people that she is associated with, just to see whether or not there is any information whatsoever that can help them locate Zubaydah.
There would also have been the local inquiries being conducted, house-to-house inquiries. Are there any footprints where they would normally be or not?
Investigators focus on Zubaydah's street, where she was reportedly last seen, going for a run.
When she was first reported missing, we were at home because we had a knock on the door from the police asking if we had seen her. The police asked us if we had any dashcam footage of their house. The police have took our SD card from the car, and obviously there was no footage on there. But apart from that, I found it to be a bit strange that she went missing. It was just very strange.
The police shortly after did put out a press release to the media saying, could we report that she was missing and if anybody had information about it, and it was front page news in Bromsgrove. I wrote articles on it at the time. She was a young mother of 2 and somebody who was well known in the area, and it seemed a surprise that she would suddenly disappear. It didn't seem to make sense, and a lot of people were interested in it and worried about her as well.
I was going through social media It said that Zubaida had gone missing on the Sunday. The neck hairs stood up. In my heart, I knew something terrible had happened. I commented on that post, "A lovely woman, I hope she's found safe."
The reasons behind it just don't seem clear. It seemed like a bit of a mystery for the area, and especially as a lot of people had only seen her a few days before serving up pizzas in the takeaway.
There was no trace of Zubaida anywhere, of course, apart from the text messages.
Detectives start investigating Zubaida's links overseas.
Zubaida Salangi was an Afghan national, and she was one of 8 children who lived in the Hindu Kush region, mountains just outside of Kabul.
So Zubaida was born in 1991 in Afghanistan. She was raised there with her extended family, brothers, sisters, aunties, uncles, obviously her parents. She qualified as a maths teacher and actually worked in a school in Afghanistan.
And she was a highly educated woman and had aspirations.
Zubaida came to the UK as a result of her marriage to Nizam Salangi. That was an arranged traditional marriage between the families. And Zubaida came to the UK to be with Nizam in around 2013.
She carried on wanting to learn, and she was going to evening classes to do English at college.
She had a really strong work ethic, not only from working at Prego Pizza, but her desire and drive to help other people in terms of education. And it was ultimately to be her dream that she would work in the education system in the United Kingdom.
Investigators are puzzled. Inquiries reveal Zubaida making a go of life in Britain. But her missing persons report suggests she's not happy with her life here.
And straight away, when you get a missing person inquiry like that, where it is totally out of character, that raises red flags. You just get that feeling that something is just not right.
Police start to scour the family home.
A search of the property would be conducted with the consent of the owner. That is standard in missing person inquiries. Checking loft spaces, etc., just to make sure that that individual isn't actually where they should be at home.
Nizam Salangi took police to show her wardrobe and an 8-inch gap in her clothes rail where she had taken clothing and left.
And there were 2 handwritten notes to the children explaining why she's left.
Police officers attended Prego Pizza and they searched the rear of the premises.
It was searched by a pulsar team, which is a number of officers who are specifically trained. They're licensed search officers. One of their major skills is searching, detailed searching, leave no void unexplored.
They searched, in particular, a storage area where there were many boxes.
In the rear storeroom, concealed on a shelf, which could only be accessed via stepladders, we found a purse which had been secreted behind a load of pizza packing boxes. That was Zubaida's purse. In that purse was her driving licence, some photographs of her children, and some cash.
It was something they felt that she wouldn't have left behind if she'd actually run off with somebody else.
In that same area, in a cavity within the wall space, was an iPhone box, a mobile phone box, wrapped in bubble wrap. And in there was a phone that subsequently transpired to be used by Zubaida to contact her family in Afghanistan.
That was a real pivotal moment for the police investigation.
It became quite obvious that something was severely wrong.
In Bromsgrove, mother of 2, Zubaida Salangi, has been missing for nearly a week. As investigators continue searching the takeaway business she runs with her husband Nizam, word spreads across the local community.
I actually took it upon myself to drive past Prego Pizza because I'd been so upset. I didn't know what had happened, and I saw forensic vans people in white suits carrying trays from Prego Pizza and putting them into the van. At that point, I think I knew that something is wrong.
Investigators start analysing their discoveries at the premises, Zubaida's phone and her driving licence.
It's a very significant find because Zubaida wasn't yet in possession of a British passport, so her driving licence would have been absolutely key for her as a form of identification. And of course, if she was going to leave, why would she leave images of her children who were very dear to her, as you would expect, at home and not take them with her? And then of course, her one means of contacting her family, that phone, was massively significant because that was her only support network, her contact with her family in Afghanistan.
By now, police have also spoken to Zubaida's family overseas.
It's very clear that she was someone who was very loved indeed by her family. Such was that love that they would regularly contact each other every single day.
Officers made contact with Mr. Valzadar, Zubaida's father, in Afghanistan, and it became apparent that he'd not heard from his daughter since the 27th of March.
And that was really unusual because she was so family orientated. So if Zubaida was planning to leave the country and go home, then her family would have been the first people that she'd contacted, and they would know that she was on her way. So the fact that they hadn't heard from her was really distressing.
The police would have understandably been very concerned at this stage because, having been shown by Nizam Salangi part of her wardrobe missing, text messages purportedly from her indicating that she had left him and the family. But in fact, having searched Prego Pizza, they discovered something completely different. So suspicions quickly turned on Nazim Salangi.
People in the local community are also questioning Nazim's claims.
It was common knowledge that Nizam had said she'd gone out for a jog on the Sunday and not come back.
Thought there's no way she would have been out jogging. No way. Because we never seen her apart from school runs, going to work, coming back from work. That's the only time I would see her. Definitely not for a jog.
Who goes out for a jog, leaving your children? Personally, myself, I never left my children in that situation. So that did not ring true at all.
On social media, there were a lot of questions. I think there was a lot of disbelief that she would have actually left the country. She seemed that she was quite settled here and she had a family, and it didn't seem to make sense.
Detectives soon discover something sinister about the seemingly happy couple.
For customers at the pizza parlour, they'd just see the couple behind the counter who were friendly and chatty, and it seemed like a normal marriage. A few people who got closer to them did comment that there were signs that maybe things behind closed doors weren't so happy.
I'd always try and make conversation, try and get Zubaida to sort of look at me, you know. She was a very shy person, but I think as I came to know them as a couple, there were a few red flags that I picked up on during my visits there. I noticed every time I spoke to Zubaida, Nizam would stop what he was doing and turn his head, and she would sort of crumble, go very quiet, look away, and not acknowledge that I was there. And she would sort of like fade into the background. I had a feeling that she wanted to communicate more, but felt she couldn't. And I'd commented to my husband a few times that I felt he was controlling her. I'm a survivor of domestic abuse. I ended up fleeing to a women's refuge. And one of the things they teach you there is how to recognise a manipulator.
It was a relationship that was plagued with lots of troubles. She would regularly argue with Nizam.
I don't think it was a happy marriage. I sensed that Zubaydah felt extremely trapped by the culture that she'd married into, trapped by the fact that she loved her kids and would do anything for them and would not leave for that reason. There was clearly some abuse, which was reflected in numerous phone calls between Zubaydah and her family back in Afghanistan. She would contact them regularly. Her family would tell us that she would often speak of her unhappiness and her physical and emotional abuse within her marriage at the hands of Nizam.
Zubaydah's friend Samantha confirms investigators' worst fears.
I told them I'd noticed a few red flags. The next thing, they asked me if they could come and take a statement from me, which they did do. And I said, one time I went in with my husband and I looked at Zubaydah as I was stood waiting, and I noticed that she got a black eye. It looked like she'd covered it up with some foundation. It was purple and black, and I spoke to her. I asked her what she had done. All the time Nizam was glaring at her and said basically she'd banged it on the cooker hood. I didn't believe her immediately. I did not believe her. I was talking to my husband as we left the shop, and I said, I believe he's done that. I think he's going to end up killing her.
As the inquiry moved on, his willingness to assist began to dwindle, which also, of course, arose suspicions with the investigating officers.
Part of the investigation process by the police into this missing persons inquiry involved them looking at bank accounts, and they discovered that there had been transactions on one of her accounts in various locations.
Detectives spot transactions made after Zubaydah reportedly went missing.
These were cash withdrawals in Birmingham. So, of course, CCTV inquiries are conducted at those cash points to see if we can establish who is withdrawing that cash.
And when they viewed that CCTV footage, they saw a figure who they believed to be Nizam Salangi. Understandably, the police would have been very suspicious of this, given what Nizam Salangi had previously told them, that she had run away with another man and wasn't coming back.
More significantly, an analysis of the phone data showed that the texts purportedly sent by Zubaydah from her phone to Nizam's phone were actually sent whilst her phone was in Bromsgrove.
This obviously led the police to be very suspicious indeed, and ultimately showed Nizam to be lying about Zubaydah having left the area.
We could tell from the location of Zubaydah's phone and the location of Nizam's phone at the time the text messages were sent that they were actually co-locating, and the phones were moving round together. So it couldn't have been Zubaydah who was sending those texts.
The police quickly concluded that Nizam Salangi had himself sent these messages using her mobile phone to message his phone.
He had actually been sending these texts to himself, pretending to be his wife.
It was clear that Nizam was fabricating a series of events to try and show some proof that Zubaydah was conducting her daily business, i.e. sending text messages, withdrawing money from the bank. We've got the significant fines at Prego Pizza, the phone, the purse, and his unwillingness to cooperate with inquiries is amazingly suspicious and absolutely tipped the balance into something far more sinister or potentially likely a homicide.
With all this information, the police made the decision, and quite rightly, that a missing persons inquiry quickly became into a murder inquiry. And they attended Nizam's address on Talbot Road and arrested him on suspicion of murder.
In Bromsgrove, takeaway owner Nezem Salangi is in custody on suspicion of murdering his wife and mother of two, Zubaydah.
We learned that he'd been arrested, which was completely, massive shock.
At this point, we've gone from a missing person report to suspected murder, and that's huge in terms of how the community felt, but also what was being reported in the media. Murders were very rare in Bromsgrove, and it sent real shockwaves through the community.
From that day on, really, the whole street was swarmed with police cars, police vans, a massive tow truck to remove the cars.
It was headline news for us at the newspaper, and everyone wanted to know more about what could have led to this.
Most of the kind of like gossip that was going round was that they believed that Nizam had done something to her. And I think that just goes to show how many people kind of like had a feeling something was going on, like domestic abuse. Didn't want to voice their opinions. I thought horrendous thoughts that he had killed her, and thoughts as to what I could have done differently. Was there anybody I could have gone and told?
Once you've decided to make an arrest, straight away, the clock is ticking in respect of your ability and the time you have to deal with that individual you've got in custody. There's a lot of pressure on an SIO and their team to make ground as fast and as best as they can.
Investigators seize their suspect's mobile. What they find on it confirms what the family have told them.
Nizam had captured a video on his mobile phone. There'd clearly been a domestic argument on the 27th of March. The children were present in the house. It was clearly very emotional. They were arguing in Afghan.
In that argument, Zubaydah was holding a kitchen knife to her wrist in what was plainly a complete act of desperation. She was, by this stage, terribly unhappy in the relationship that she was in.
And threatening to self-harm, and locks herself in the bathroom. During it, she yells at him that he'd destroyed her life for the last 8 years, which is how long they'd been married.
And basically saying to him, you carry on filming, you've made me so unhappy. And of course, Nizam was keen for people to see that.
Under questioning, Nezem maintains his story, that his wife has fled their marital home.
I think Nizam was keen that video represented that Zubaydah was suffering from some kind of mental health episode or was very desperate, and therefore the fact that she may have gone missing may have come as no surprise.
But analysts find even more interesting activity on Nezem's phone, recorded the day after their violent argument.
On the 28th of March, Nizam, his brother Ramin and his brother Yazin all commenced using 3 new phone numbers that had not previously been used before, which in itself is suspicious. 28th of March is the last time that anybody had ever seen or heard from Zubaydah, and she was never to be seen again.
One of the phones had only been activated for 48 hours and seemed to be a burner phone, and it raised suspicions over why somebody would do that at the same time that Zubaydah went missing.
Detectives now focus on Nezem's brothers and their movements that day.
Rahman and Yasin Salangi lived in Cardiff, but they worked in Caerphilly in a pizza takeaway. The police investigation turned to the pizza takeaway in Caerphilly, and that included examining the CCTV footage of what had been going on in the takeaway. That showed unusual and suspicious behaviour between Rahman and Yasin, both on mobile telephones, on the 28th of March.
Investigators trace calls being made to their brother Nezim, but this is the first time they have spoken to him all year.
CCTV footage revealed that shortly after 10 p.m, Yasin Salangi was seen to reach underneath a counter and retrieve a mobile phone that he handed to Rahman.
And as a result of that phone data inquiries, we could see that on the night of the 28th of March, Rahman actually travelled up from Newport and came to Bromsgrove and met with Nizam.
During questioning, Nezim comes up with an explanation.
He told the police that the reason why Rahman had come from Caerphilly down to Bromsgrove was because a part of the oven in Prego Pizza had broken, and that he had requested his brother to come down with a particular part to replace in the broken oven. In fact, there was nothing wrong with the oven whatsoever. So the police attention turned to Nizam Salangi to see exactly what he had been doing that day.
The 28th of March is really significant because we know on that day that Nizam was expecting a gent to come to the pizza shop. He actually contacted that gent and said, "Don't bother coming, I'm not opening the pizza shop," and gave an excuse along the lines of something was wrong with one of the pizza ovens and therefore business was not going to be conducted as usual. And of course that gent never came.
The police also spoke to one of the chefs who worked at Prego Pizza, and they established from him that in fact Nizam Salangi had cancelled the chef for that day.
Police uncover something else rather sinister about the 28th of March.
Part of the police inquiry revealed that a tenant who had been living up above in a flat in Prego Pizza had been contacted by Nizam Salangi.
We actually traced that individual and he confirms that Nizam actually called him on the 28th to see when he was coming back into the country. And again, this was really suspicious, taken together with the cancellation of the gent coming up on that day. He clearly wanted no one around to interfere with what he had to do.
Police now suspect this was the day Zubaydah was killed. And Ramin was called upon that evening to help his brother Nezim dispose of the body.
It was key to the investigation to know where Nizam and Ramin have gone during these hours where they're together in and around Bromsgrove. Crucial to those inquiries are CCTV. We knew they were in a white Nissan vehicle. Although you couldn't see the registration number of that vehicle, a similar vehicle was captured on numerous pieces of CCTV from various locations. It basically showed that vehicle travelling out of Bromsgrove towards an area called Lower Bentley. During the early hours of the morning, we were able to calculate that they were probably in or around the area of Lower Bentley for approximately 2.5 to 3 hours for the return journey into Bromsgrove. We had the phone that Nizam was carrying linking to the Wi-Fi at Prego Pizza, so we could time when they got back to that location. A short stop at Prego Pizza before going back out to Lower Bentley. Our hypothesis being that they've gone out to Lower Bentley, prepared an area for deposition disposal. They've come back into Bromsgrove, collected Zubaydah, gone back out to that area and disposed of her body.
But finding Zubaydah's body is a different story. Limited mobile coverage in rural Worcestershire makes it harder to track the suspect's phones.
You are entering a massively rural area. It's huge. Fields, farms, canals, all stretching along the side of the motorway. We were unable to pinpoint exactly where they'd been, so it became a priority to sectorise that vast area and methodically day by day, put officers through that area on foot with dogs. Huge operation, massively time-consuming.
The police started searching the area. It was noticeable that they were looking out in the countryside, and that spread like wildfire, and people started to question whether actually she'd been buried somewhere.
There were about 20 police, 10 on either side of the lane, with long sticks, were sweeping through the side of the road, trying to see if there was anything in there in the hedges. And then the drones, when they came, were up in the opposite direction down there, and they were just searching in the fields all around.
It's really, really frustrating because you know that you are generally in the right area, but you just don't know where exactly you need to be.
Suddenly, there's a breakthrough.
Just off a road called Copy Holt Lane, search officers came across what looked like a grave-shaped marking in the ground in a copse. It was a secluded area of woodland next to a lake. It also looked as if it had been disguised with branches and leaves, and of course they were extremely suspicious.
Investigators seal off the scene.
They'd got a car across the road blocking it off, and were putting up, police tape around the area. It was clearly some sort of a crime scene.
To find that grave in our area of interest was highly significant. That's what we were looking for.
The police excavated this area of ground by hand, and they dug down to a natural level of clay.
But unfortunately, his body wasn't found there.
At this stage, the police were understandably frustrated by the fact that Zubaydah Salangi's body had not been found, despite them having dug what they thought to be her grave. So the task for the police was made more difficult. But with great care and determination, they put together all the evidence that they had to be able to put before the Crown Prosecution Service and a decision be made to charge Nizam Salangi with murder.
You may have convinced the CPS, but you've got to convince a jury beyond all reasonable doubt that he is guilty of that murder.
Bromsgrove takeaway owner Nizam Salangi has been charged with the murder of his missing 28-year-old wife, Zubaydah. But police still haven't found a body.
Just because Nizam had been charged, in some regards, with a no-body murder, the job has only just started.
Investigators home in on the role of Nizam's brother, Ramin.
When Ramin Salangi was arrested and interviewed by police, he initially spun the same tale as his brother did. But when the police confronted him with all the evidence that they had gathered, it was then that he began to tell the police more information. Zubaydah was dead and that she had hung herself.
And they brought the body down from the flat above, Prego Pizza, and put it into the back of Nizam's car.
He indicated the purpose of the trips out to Lower Bentley was to dispose of her body.
That was a real breakthrough moment for the police, because at that point, Nizam hadn't said anything about what happened.
As a result of his admission, Ramin Salangi is charged with assisting an offender. But to make their case watertight, police need to find Zubaydah. In August 2020, DCI Mark Peters is brought in to head up the investigation.
My absolute objective was to find Zubaydah. I feel like she almost becomes part of your life. I'd photograph of her on my phone. I would have sleepless nights. Absolutely all-consuming, because we just did not know where she was, and it was totally frustrating. So I decided to go to one of the pre-trial hearings at Worcester Crown Court. And that's the first time I'd seen Nizam and Ramin in the flesh. And I looked at them and I just thought, you two are anything but master criminals. And it just got me thinking, why would you go to the trouble of digging a grave, finding it not fit for purpose, then you'll fill that grave back in and go to the lengths they did to try and disguise it? So I canvassed a number of key individuals within the team. The opinion of the forensic archaeologist was that he was 98% sure from the crime scene photography that we were at the bottom of that grave from the first dig. And that 2% was just too much for me. I want to be 100% sure that we hadn't missed something at that location.
So the police went back and they decided to dig again at the exact spot they had before, at that makeshift grave.
And then went further, about 5 inches.
And lo and behold, having done so, the police found the body of Zubaydah Solangi.
It was such a relief. It was very, very emotional. And it's a day I will never, ever forget.
The news spreads throughout Zubaydah's hometown.
When they found her, although it was very emotional, I was glad that they'd found her for her family.
I just couldn't believe it. Shock, really. Just awful, absolutely awful.
I attended the post-mortem. Unfortunately, due to the passage of time that Zubaydah had remained in the grave, we were unable to establish an absolute cause of death. But we can establish very compelling evidence as to what had happened. She was wrapped in household bin bags. She was in a Primark duvet cover, which essentially formed a kind of sack tied with rope. The pillowcase of that duvet set had been located during a previous search at Talbot Road. Her feet were bound with a curtain wire, and when we went back to Talbot Road, there was one window at the front living room that had curtain wire that was absent.
This was a hugely significant find because obviously it gave a direct link from Zubaydah Solangi back to the home of Nazim.
The parting letters supposedly left by Zubaydah are also proven to be fakes.
We were able to prove, with the use of a handwriting expert, that in fact there is no way she could have written those letters.
This was a case that was filled with pieces of circumstantial evidence. And like a puzzle, those pieces in isolation didn't appear to be anything substantial. But when they were put together, it was very clear indeed to see the involvement of Nizam Solangi in the murder of Zubaydah.
"18 months after finding Zubaydah's body, her husband Nezim finally faces justice. He pleads not guilty to murder, and his brothers Ramin and Yasin plead not guilty to charges of assisting an offender.
I went to court and I testified. I felt like I had to be that voice for Zubaydah. Nizam had got his feet up. He didn't look bothered at all. He was just staring straight at me. I tried to avoid eye contact, but on the occasion that I looked at him, he was just smirking. And he didn't look regretful at all. The defence was quite gruelling. They tried to say that Zubaydah did in fact have a black eye, but that was years ago. And I said, no, it was 6 weeks before she went missing. So I just basically stood my ground. I had to be strong. I wanted to make sure she was not forgotten.
The The prosecution reveals how the violent row captured on Nezim's smartphone the day before Zubaydah went missing was to be their last.
That night, after he went to the pizza parlour, that she went on Facebook and unfriended him and his brothers and was searching for cleaning jobs.
To stop his wife from leaving him, Nezim decides on murder.
During the court case, the web of lies that Nizam had put together was completely unravelled. The prosecution showed that a lot of what he'd said just wasn't true, and piece by piece, it showed that he was just a heartless killer.
After a 7-week trial, the jury retires.
When the guilty verdicts came in, it was a feeling of huge relief.
Upon being found guilty, he became very vocal towards the officers in the case, essentially alleging that we'd fabricated evidence to stitch him up.
I think he thought he was going to get away with it. I felt glad that he's got what he deserves.
Nezim Solangi is jailed for a minimum of 18 years. Ramin Solangi sentenced to 6 years, and his brother Yasin for 4 years and 9 months.
Of course, it's the verdict we wanted, but it doesn't bring Zubaydah back.
The murder has also left its mark on Bromsgrove.
Even now, there's still times when people think about it, especially going past there in that precinct. And just to think that they had a killer in their community.
If I could speak to Zubaydah now, I think I'd rather go back in the past. Said, look, come with me. I'll take you somewhere, anywhere away from him. Because then she'd still be here. But I hope she's out there somewhere and she knows that I've done something for her.
If you have been affected by any of the issues raised in this programme, help is available online at sky.com/viewer support.
It looked as if the body had been dropped from the sky.
I could hear my mum screaming, and by then I just knew.
It just wasn't right, so it fills you with a cold dread.
So here we are coming to the stage where the serial killer effect kicked in.
Early in the morning of the 28th of August 1981, a commuter discovered the mutilated body of a young girl dumped by the Thames in Windsor. Unable to pinpoint exactly where she'd been killed meant that finding the killer was like looking for a needle in a haystack. All the police knew for certain was that they were looking for a violent and sadistic individual who took pleasure in inflicting pain, and that he was likely to do it again. Built on the banks of the River Thames in Berkshire is the town of Windsor. It's home to Windsor Castle, which has been an official residence of the British royal family for almost 1,000 years.
Windsor is a very, very busy town, very busy tourist town. However, the village of Windsor, the residence area of Windsor, is very local, just like any other village, and everybody knows everybody, and everybody knows everybody else's business.
On a bright, sunny Friday morning in August 1981, Kenneth Linney of Thames Valley Police received a phone call, starting a case that would become a 30-year personal crusade.
I was at home and I received a call about 6:30 in the morning to say that a body had been found on the banks of the Thames in Windsor. I immediately attended.
When Detective Superintendent Linney reached the scene at 6:45, he was met by a horrific sight.
I arrived at Barry Avenue, where the body was in a face-down position, naked, that of a teenage girl, and it transpired that it was found by a man on his way to work. He immediately notified the police. I then made various phone calls and got other officers out to form an inquiry team and the uniformed officers to seal the area off. And from there it went on into a general investigation.
There was no attempt to conceal the body, in fact, far from it. And one can only speculate as to the significance of this, but it could be that leaving the body in that condition to full public view might have been an additional twist to the humiliation of the victim.
Houseboats moored just meters from the body were immediately investigated.
All those boats were stopped from moving, and officers then started interviewing the occupants to see if they'd heard anything during the night.
By 7 a.m. they had ascertained that no one had heard anything, and Detective Superintendent Linney continued organising the investigation.
I notified then the Home Office pathologist. I then formulated a small incident room at Windsor Police Station until we had identified the body. It was very important to find out who this girl was. No girl had been reported missing in the Windsor area.
Almost 13 miles away near Hanwell in West London, mother of 3 Carol Walterson made a worrying discovery about her 17-year-old daughter Claire.
Went to wake her up and she wasn't in her bed, and it just wasn't right, so it fills you with a cold dread.
A worried Carol went to work, whilst in Windsor the police investigation continued.
It looked as if the body had been dropped from the sky due to the fact there was no blood or anything outside the basic body area. And bear in mind that there were severe wounds to the body. This was a problem for us. But we could find no forensic evidence as to where it was dropped from.
The forensic team then went about doing a procedure called taping.
Taping is done with sellotape to take any particles off the body. It's laid out then and sealed and used later on then for forensic report purposes.
In the early 80s, forensic scientists could only compare and match fibre samples. So until they found a comparison, the tapings were sent to storage. Then a preliminary investigation was carried out by the pathologist at the scene.
The wounds that were on the body could have been done in situ, where the body was found. But the body was definitely unconscious, if not lifeless, when it was laid on the footpath.
The pathologist found that Claire's throat had been cut and she'd been sadistically mutilated. It was too much, even for the most experienced of officers.
The injuries caused to the girl, horrific injuries that were caused to her, and how she must have suffered. And I think it affects you. I had four daughters, and I could see my teenage daughters in the same situation. So it does affect you.
It wasn't long before this horrendous and baffling murder made the national news.
I went to work and heard on the radio that they'd found somebody, her body, and I just knew it was her. I just knew it was her from where they found her in Windsor, which wasn't far from us. I don't know why, I just knew it was her, so I went into a complete panic. I phoned all the friends that I knew to see whether she was there. I phoned her work, and they were very cross that she just hadn't turned up. So I got home and went straight to the police station.
Once Claire had been reported missing, police quickly made the potential link.
The Metropolitan Police rang to say that a girl was missing from the Hanwell area. So we've notified them again, and officers came down and they identified the body.
Certain they had the right person, it was time for the police to tell the family and confirm Carol's worst fears.
Yes, it was her. After they looked at photos and things. And I can't even begin to describe what it was like after that.
Claire's older brother Nick arrived home, hoping his sister was still just missing.
After I heard it on the radio and everything else, and I made my way home, and that, as I was walking down the pavement, I could hear my mum screaming indoors. I could hear her screaming, and by then I just knew as well. And I think it was the police or someone that answered the door, and I think I just turned and said, "Is it?" or something, and they said, "Yeah."
Thames Valley police officers wasted no time looking into Claire's background.
I went up with another officer to Yedding Lane, to the family home, and there spoke to Mr. and Mrs. Bevel. They, of course, were in a terrible state, and I then again got officers to sit with them and left them to mourn their fate. It was a terrible shock, because the girl was used to going out during the day, and she was a local girl, and was well liked by everybody in the district.
On a council estate, there wasn't too much to do, but you have lots of friends, so she was always with friends, and, well, we always had a house full of friends. I think that was more her enjoyment. And also when she got her job, that became the be-all and end-all of her life, because she loved it so much and obviously loved the people there as well.
The next morning, the sun may have risen as usual, but for Claire's mum, Carol, the world as she knew it had ended.
All I can really remember is the house being full of policemen. It was just basically showing photos, and so really then we were dealing with it the next day when we knew it really was her, and been dealing with it ever since.
Whilst the family began a lifetime of grieving, the police continued with their investigation, determined to find Claire's vicious killer.
It was decided that an incident room, a major incident room, should be set up in the Metropolitan Police District.
Pete Byrne was a young policeman at that time.
I was involved in the investigation, in that I was a young detective and was part of the 50-strong team of detectives that worked on the investigation.
The police's first job was to build up a picture of Claire and her final movements on that fateful Thursday night.
Claire was ironing, and we said, "Are you going out tonight?" And she said, "No."
Me and Claire was just sitting in the kitchen having a chat, which was unusual really. We was having a good old chat and everything, and she weren't going out that night. And that, you know, but the funny thing was, I remember, God, we must be growing up because of the way we was talking to each other. But I don't know, she was staying in and that was it.
But when we got home, she had gone out. She was 17, it wasn't a problem. But she was always in by 10 o'clock or abouts. But I thought 17, okay, it's 11 o'clock, you know. It's always the first time. But then when she didn't come home, couldn't sleep at all, because it just wasn't like her. She'd never been away all night unless we'd known about it. But then I heard laughing outside, and I thought, oh, she's home. So I went off to sleep.
It didn't take long for police to piece together Claire's last night.
On the Thursday evening, Claire had gone to see her boyfriend, who ran an amusement arcade on the Uxbridge Road at Ealing. She had left there around about 10 p.m. Normally, he would have given her a lift home, but they had a slight disagreement, and she refused a lift. So she walked along the Uxbridge Road in the direction of her home in Northolt. Her boyfriend did attempt to get her into the car, stopped, asked her to get into the car, but she refused. That sighting of Claire being spoken to by her boyfriend is the last known sighting of Claire alive.
The boyfriend was immediately treated as a suspect.
He said he went home then by 10:30 that night, but he was arrested on suspicion of murder.
Even though the police had been left with no clues, could they have already managed to find the murderer? In August 1981, 17-year-old Claire Walterton had been horrifically murdered and dumped in Windsor, and so far, no forensic evidence had been found. Police had quickly pieced together Claire's final movements, identifying the last person she was seen with, who was arrested for murder and questioned.
Inquiries in relation to his whereabouts later on that evening revealed that he had gone home and was seen by a neighbour walking a dog shortly afterwards, so therefore he was ruled out as being the potential attacker of Claire.
With their only suspect now eliminated, the police looked at using the power of publicity.
There was a lot of media activity, television and all, up at Hanwell. And of course the papers then had large columns on it.
Information about Claire's last night was released by police to the press.
2 ladies came forward following publicity and said that they'd seen a girl dragged into a car at the junction of Uxbridge and Yedding Lane about roughly around the time that Claire was last seen. They couldn't give any descriptions. All they could say was a dark-coloured car.
Keen to get the most from their only lead, police weren't afraid to try experimental techniques.
I resorted to hypnotists actually interviewing some of these people, because we felt that if you can probably refresh someone's memory by that means, then of course we may come up with something that the person doesn't think of normally.
Hypnotism didn't seem to have the desired effect.
Whether that person that the lady saw was Claire is unknown. A large part of the initial investigation centred on trying to identify that vehicle, but it was never traced.
The ladies were so vague about this. They thought a girl was pulled into a car. There was no screams, nothing whatsoever, and it was some distance away they saw it. So there was no evidential value really in that particular incident.
Disappointed but undeterred, the investigation team continued with their inquiries.
The incident room then, once we established it at Norwood Green, became a very busy place because we had to do a lot of house-to-house inquiries from Hanwell down the Uxbridge Road right up to the top of Yedding Lane, which would have covered the area where she would have walked. Then other inquiries had to be dealt with. You had inquiries, national inquiries, you had inquiries dealing with people with previous convictions for that type of offence or for sexual offences. So there was a lot of work to be done and a lot of foot slogging, to put it plainly.
For some on the team, this was all a new experience.
It was my first ever murder, and I was just learning how things are done on a major investigation in terms of the system. There was no computer as such, so everything was paper-based, but everything had to be done in a clear and methodical way so that nothing was missed.
There was a huge amount of work to be done.
The police inquiries, the witnesses, the incident room sometimes picks out something which is unusual from statements or movements or a person, the background of a person. And they have to be followed up, and they're known as actions. Actions are then dealt with by the detective officers who are out on the ground. It takes a long time. The average working hours during the day on an inquiry like that can be anything from 12 to 14 hours a day. Takes a lot of work.
After months of fruitlessly investigating every possible avenue, police were getting desperate.
Clairvoyants came forward. So many people came forward because it was a nasty murder. And the press gave it a lot of publicity.
With nothing to lose, a clairvoyant was introduced to Carol and the family.
She got in touch with them and they were clutching at straws. And she stayed for a couple of hours. But she kept saying things that Claire would have said, but Claire would never have spoken the way she was speaking, and she kept making out she was talking to her, which I found so upsetting, because if Claire was going to talk to anybody, she would have talked to me. Sorry. So, yeah, I had to ask her if she would go in the end, because she'd really overstayed her welcome.
In the spring of 1982, over 6 months after Claire Walterton's mutilated body was discovered in Windsor, the police still didn't have a single lead.
We tried everything, and with the result, of course, we didn't get anywhere. We had all our exhibits. They were put in storage in 1982. And then, as I say, I thought at that stage that we'll never solve the case unless, because of the sadistic injuries that were caused, were we dealing with the serial killer.
It was a horrible thought. Claire's killer probably wouldn't be caught unless they killed again.
This was someone who was really, really sadistic. And that was the type of person we were looking for.
The mutilation, the clearly sexual nature of the crime, suggests that there's a distinct possibility that the individual would strike again.
The failure to track down Claire's murderer was a big blow for everyone concerned.
You have to remember what things were like back in 1981. DNA as an investigative tool didn't exist. There was no CCTV. Mobile phones were very, very rare, and automatic number plate recognition didn't exist. However, you can only do what you can do, and if all the normal lines of inquiry haven't produced anything, then unfortunately you have to be pragmatic, and the investigation is wound down.
Well, it's disappointing that you like to get a result. You think of the girl lying on the pavement in Windsor, and it affects you. I don't care how hard anybody is, but it affects you. And it affected other officers at the time.
The chilling thought that Claire's killer would strike again never left the officers involved in the case. And in December 1984, Detective Superintendent Linney received the news he'd been expecting for over 2 years.
I had a phone call from officers over at Denham to say that they had found a body on the golf course. They told me that the body that they had was of a girl, naked and with horrific injuries. Now, I thought, well, this is identical. The modus operandi kicked in. The modus operandi is the method used by criminals, the same method that is used. And that is the base of serial killers. So here we are coming to the stage where the serial killer effect kicked in.
Now investigating 2 similar killings, Thames Valley Police were forced to wonder, had Claire's murderer struck again? Just over 3 years after the unsolved murder of Claire Walterton in Windsor, a mutilated body of a woman called Deirdre Sainsbury was found dumped at a golf course in Denham. It was a discovery that grabbed the police's attention. The body found on the golf course had chilling similarities to the murder of Claire Walterton.
As soon as I heard of this incident and the fact that it was identical more or less to the girl that was found in Windsor, Claire Walterton's name, of course, was there, printed all over it.
A murder investigation was immediately launched.
The police publicised the fact of the murder, and by chance, a man had seen Deirdre get into a vehicle on the South Circular Road in Richmond. That man had only recently read an article in the Reader's Digest which talked about the dangers of hitchhikers, and he had the presence of mind to recall the index number or registration number of the car that this hitchhiker had got into.
It was a huge piece of luck.
Police from the Denham inquiry, having received the registered owner of the vehicle, went to the house of Colin Campbell, who was the registered owner. They searched his property and found in the garage the clothing from the girl found on the golf course at Denham.
Police arrested and interviewed 37-year-old travelling salesman and keen amateur hockey player, Colin Campbell.
He admitted picking Deirdre up, stated that he chatted to her en route. In doing so, he gave his name, or his first name, and he felt, as he was getting on so well with her, he would try it on. He did. According to him, she retaliated and hit him, and then he hit her. But he stated he hit her so hard that she became unconscious. He stated he then panicked because he had given his name to her, and in a panic, he then hit her about the head with a hockey stick, which is in the back of his car.
Campbell also admitted mutilating the body, allegedly to make it look like a maniac had done it. Convinced that there was a strong connection between Deirdre and Claire's killings, Detective Superintendent Linney went to see Campbell, hoping he might also confess to Claire's murder.
He was absolutely so suave, so complete, answered everything that I asked. Windsor? Oh yes, he'd been to Windsor. He'd been everywhere that I mentioned. But I had nothing whatsoever at that stage to connect him with Claire's murder. Nothing had been found at his property. And so I was left as I was in the beginning. And which was rather sad actually, because I thought that he might just break, but no.
It was disappointing, but the investigation into the brutal murder of Deirdre Sainsbury moved quickly.
Having been interviewed, admitted being responsible for Deirdre's death, he was charged with the murder and stood trial at Reading Crown Court. His plea in court was not guilty to murder. He stated that whilst responsible for Deirdre's death, he killed her whilst suffering an epileptic episode.
The jury chose not to believe an epileptic episode could explain this brutal and sexually motivated killing. In July 1985, just 6 months after her death, Campbell was convicted of Deirdre Sainsbury's murder and sentenced to life imprisonment. But Detective Superintendent Linney wasn't satisfied.
It was too much of a coincidence that we had the modus operandi of a man who was sadistic when he dealt with Deirdre Sainsbury, and the same man, in my opinion, committed the murder of Claire Walterton. I had to sit back and just wait and wait, because I felt this. He might talk later on. This happens. They sometimes do, if there's something on their mind.
Unaware of Kenneth Linney's theory, as the years went by, Claire's family tried to cope with the huge void that had been left in their lives.
I think about it all the time. Always remember birthdays. Christmases is very difficult. very difficult because she was Christmas. Holidays were difficult. In fact, you spend a lot of time thinking that you shouldn't be doing holidays, Christmas and things like that, because it didn't feel right without her being there.
For me, Claire was Claire. I can't explain to you how that is. Claire was just a happy-go-lucky Claire.
Most memories I have are quite normal memories, because having a meal was just never having a meal. It was always laughing, having a meal at something that she'd either done or was doing while you were having the meal. So mostly, when we sit down for dinner, I often remember some of the silly things she did. You know, she would either have peas up her nose or ice cream all over her face, or she would fill her mouth up with food and then laugh with her mouth open. It sounds awful, but when you're having a meal, it's actually quite funny.
Well, with my brother, it really affected him badly. He had a nervous breakdown and everything. So in the end, I didn't just lose a sister, I lost half of a brother as well, because he just weren't the same ever since.
In 1996, 15 years after his conviction for murdering Deirdre Sainsbury, Colin Campbell appealed.
He stated that whilst he was guilty of causing her death, it wasn't murder.
At the appeal, he put forward the same defence as his original trial, but this time with the backing of an expert, who stated that due to being on the wrong medication, an epileptic episode could have been to blame. Campbell's conviction was quashed, and in 1999, a retrial ordered.
At that retrial, Campbell proffered a plea to manslaughter, which was accepted by the Crown, and he was therefore convicted and sentenced to life imprisonment again, but with a minimum tariff of 1 day.
The presiding judge, Mr. Justice Gage, said that whilst the court accepted that at the time of the killing Campbell's responsibility had been diminished, he still constituted a danger to the public, so couldn't be released without going through a parole hearing. It wasn't the result he'd hoped for.
And at subsequent hearings before the parole board, it was deemed that he was too dangerous to be released.
As the years went by, Campbell remained in prison, but the unsolved murder of Claire Walterton was never forgotten.
We didn't close the case completely, of course. You never do. We carried on taking inquiries and questions and answers from people for other forces ringing up. This often happens, and you compare notes.
Police remained determined that they would bring Claire's murderer to justice. By 2011, the depraved murderer of Claire Walterton still hadn't been found, although police did have their suspicions about Colin Campbell, who was in prison for the strikingly similar 1984 killing of Deirdre Sainsbury. In 2007, Thames Valley Police had started looking at cold cases headed up by Pete Byrne. Claire's case was about to turn a corner.
In 2011, we had the capacity to commence a reinvestigation and a review into Claire's case. What we were looking to do was to use advancements in forensic science in the intervening 30 years to see if we could potentially identify the person responsible for her death.
What the review team found was to be key in moving the case forward.
One of the items that we submitted for additional forensic work was the tapings. These tapings had been originally taken to potentially obtain fibres. However, we knew from other cases that had been investigated by other forces within the UK that now we could get DNA that had been captured from those tapings.
The evidence was sent to LGC Forensics near Oxford for DNA analysis.
Tapes were examined microscopically and small sections were cut out and submitted for DNA profiling.
Pete Byrne contacted Kenneth Linney, who had retired, to tell him a cold case review was taking place.
which I was delighted about, because I thought something might happen or come from that.
It didn't take long for the lab to come back with a result.
A mixed DNA profile was obtained which appeared to be from Claire Waterton and from an unknown male. We used that profile of the unknown male to search the National DNA Database, and this identified a list of potential contributors. Colin Campbell was amongst those individuals.
It was a name that was well known to everyone involved in the original 1981 case.
The moment I saw his name, I knew that he was a convicted killer. So I was obviously really, really excited.
The match to Campbell was strong, but it wasn't strong enough to guarantee a conviction.
At that point, they were able to say it was a 1 in a million match probability. Whilst that's good, normally for DNA, it's a 1 in a billion match probability.
A 1 in a million match probability meant that there could be up to 60 other individuals in the country who the DNA could belong to. 1 in a billion would mean it almost certainly came from Campbell.
So we needed additional forensic work to take place, which involved using a professor of genetic statistics from UCL College in London. That was going to take time, and also we were doing additional tests on other tapings that had been recovered from Claire's body.
In 2011, having been in prison for 26 years, Campbell was coming to the end of his sentence for what was now the manslaughter of Deirdre Sainsbury.
Campbell was a Category D prisoner, which meant he was allowed access out into the open, and obviously it was a potential danger to members of the public, the fact that this man potentially now was a double killer. So we had to make contact with the prison service, get him recategorised so that he was sent back to a closed prison.
Finally, after months of waiting, there was news from UCL College in London.
We had work completed by this professor of genetics who was able to say that the match probability, in his opinion, was 1 in a billion of Colin Campbell being the donor of the DNA found on the tapings.
The news meant that Kenneth Linney's original hunch in 1984 about Campbell had been right.
When I found out that Colin Campbell had been identified through DNA as being identical to a person's hair, his hair, which had been found on the tape taken at our mortuary, I was delighted.
On November the 27th, 2012, 31 years after Claire was killed, Colin Campbell was arrested. Police decided to question him.
Campbell showed no remorse whatsoever, and I got the impression that he felt that he was a victim, in as much that he had epilepsy, he had been wrongly diagnosed, he'd been given the wrong medication years ago, and it's other people's fault.
My lifestyle meant that the way I was, I wasn't averse to being friendly with the lady.
Yeah.
I may well have known a series of ladies.
Okay.
Claire may have been one of them. No, I don't. She looks like any girl I may have played hockey with. She looks like any girl I may have met through work.
Okay.
Actually, she looks like a happy person, and I'm glad about that. No, I don't recognise her.
Okay, thank you very much.
That's not to say I never ever knew her. I just don't remember her.
To my mind, had you committed that horrendous act against Claire, you would have known what you'd done and you'd remember it. But he was almost blasé about the fact, well, I can't remember what I was doing. We consulted with the Crown Prosecution Service. They agreed that Campbell should be charged. He was charged.
Once Campbell was charged, it was time to inform Claire's family.
Somebody described it as like a fresh scab that had been picked off. It was like an old wound that had been reopened, and that described it quite well for me.
On the 15th of November 2013, Colin Frederick Campbell stood trial at Reading Crown Court for the 1981 murder of Claire Walterton. Claire's mum, Carol, was there from the start.
It was very, very, very hard and very emotional and very upsetting.
Colin Campbell entered a plea of not guilty.
Campbell couldn't run the defence that the epilepsy was the cause of his actions which resulted in Claire's death. That was because the experts had given evidence for him in relation to Deirdre's death weren't happy to say that epilepsy could be responsible for two homicides.
Claire's mum, Carol, had her own way of dealing with the grisly details of the case.
I didn't stay in for all the nasty bits at all. But what I was in there for was quite difficult.
Claire's family had tremendous courage. Claire's mum wanted to come to court. She wanted to make sure that the man responsible for her daughter's death was convicted. But at the same time, and rightly so, she didn't want to know the full details of what happened to her daughter.
The prosecution called on their trump card, the DNA.
The key item was the DNA evidence. That's what brought the case to court in the first place. And when a DNA expert tells a jury this DNA is 1 billion times more likely to belong to Colin Campbell than anyone else, I think that was the key bit of information.
Faced with such compelling DNA evidence, Campbell put up his own defence.
He couldn't recall ever going into the amusement arcade where Claire had been that evening, but said he may have got in there, and had he gone in there, he may well have spoken to her, and he may well have touched her, and that's how his DNA got on her body. What was interesting was that the taping that from where the DNA was obtained was marked as being taken from Claire's buttocks, so therefore the fact that he was potentially saying it was innocent contact made that extremely unlikely.
The defence were, if I recall, trying to sort of blur the lines a little bit and discredit the DNA, but I think when you say it 1 billion times, that's pretty damning.
At the beginning of December 2013, the judge sent the jury out to deliberate.
The jury took quite a long time for it to come out, to make up their mind, which was just a nightmare again. You don't realise how much that is chewing you up inside and how much tensed you are. And that.
After 3 excruciating days, the jury came back, and Campbell was convicted of murder. A few days later, the sentence followed. The judge, Mr. Justice Spencer, stated that only Campbell would know the true circumstances in which he came to pick up Claire Walterton that Thursday night in 1981, but that he was certain he did it with the intention of sexually assaulting, mutilating, and ultimately killing her.
Colin Campbell was sentenced to life imprisonment for the murder of Claire Walterton. He must serve a minimum of 24 years. By that time, he'll be 90 years of age.
For Claire's family, it was a bittersweet moment.
I started to get fed up with people going, oh, now you'll have closure. Because you don't have closure. She's still gone. She still went through something that was horrible. I mean, I really do say I am really pleased that they got him, but having it all raked up again was really difficult.
What he got and everything else weren't even long enough, as far as I'm concerned.
He took a beautiful life away. A beautiful life. Somebody who was just coming into being a girl, a woman. And that's just not fair. It's not fair.
Kenneth Linney, who had been involved from the very beginning, was there to hear it all.
The judge, of course, made it quite clear to him when he sentenced him that he wasn't going to get away with the epilepsy excuse that he gave before. They couldn't produce any witnesses to say that it was epilepsy. And the judge made a comment that if the Court of Appeal had known his background, he mightn't have had his sentence squashed. And it was nice to know that he was convicted and rightly sentenced to a long term. He will never be released from prison.
Although former Detective Superintendent Linney wasn't the only officer with a vested interest in the outcome.
Since 1981, Claire's case has been at the forefront of everyone's mind that worked on that case. When I got my current job, when I met old detectives that worked on Claire's case, they always asked me, what's happening with Claire's case? They were all extremely pleased when we got the result and Campbell was convicted. So much so that they held a reunion 6 months after the trial where they just wanted to meet up, talk about the case and just say well done, because it was all part of their life.
After 32 years of trying to solve this brutal and bewildering case, Kenneth Linney could be satisfied they'd got the right man.
How many more people would he have killed had he got away with the Denham case? Because if you get someone who starts that activity of killing young girls and causing horrific injuries on them, when do they stop? That's the question. And I believe that we did stop the makings of a serial killer.
Campbell was in his late 60s at the time of his conviction for Claire's brutal murder, which means it was unlikely he'd ever be released. Finally, Claire and Deirdre's families could feel that justice had been done.
The scenery is stunning, but the lies are getting uglier. Reese Witherspoon, Nicole Kidman and Laura Dern lead an all-star cast. Big Little Lies is new Friday at 9 on Sky Mix.
It's an emergency. I've just walked in and found my mother's body lying there, uncompletely dead.
It was fairly obvious this was going to be a big story.
We've spent millions of pounds on this investigation, the most expensive investigations that Hampshire police have ever run.
That type of thing doesn't happen around here.
Why was this little old lady killed?
This is a murder.
Nestled beside the River Itchen sits the pretty hamlet of Brambridge.
Brambridge is typical of these tiny little hamlets that have got very, very few homes there. Everyone really knows everyone. It's a very friendly kind of place, and you've got your little store, and all community life is around those areas. It attracts a lot of visitors simply because of the River Itchen. There are lovely walks along the river there. Again, one of the most beautiful spots in England. Brambridge is most definitely one of the loveliest.
This picturesque part of Hampshire often attracts a slower pace of life.
It was always predominantly sort of an elder generation place, so people around here were sort of over 50s, 60s.
The community is an aged community. It's not an awful lot of very young people. There are some young people, of course, homes with kids and so on, but the majority of the community is older people.
The Hampshire Hogs, as they're known, they're very proud of their area. The local people who have been here for generations. And, yeah, like everywhere where it's village life, it's lovely.
At the very edge of Brambridge lived a wealthy 77-year-old grandmother, Georgina Edmonds.
Everything that was said about Georgina Edmonds was just a lovely, lovely lady. well-liked and loved by everyone that knew her, very close to her family, very friendly, and just a charming old lady.
She had grandchildren that she really enjoyed playing with, was always up for a bit of a laugh. Her grandson was a budding filmmaker, and he would make funny little videos at Christmas, and Georgina would star in those as well. And she enjoyed life. You know, she was still very independent. She was still mobile. She drove her car. She would go down to the shops, but she had assistance with that as well.
Well, I knew her because one of the jobs I did at work was, you know, to take the groceries to the dear old souls who couldn't get around. I know she always had her little dogs with her. Rather sweet little things. Very, very friendly. They used to stand up at the window and look out of the window. She was a, you know, a delightful person, and nothing to say about her that wasn't nice.
Georgina lived in a large gated estate on the edge of the river.
The Edmonds family were well known in the area. It was Georgina's husband who had founded the family business importing coffee.
Very well-to-do family. Harry, her son, worked in London. The business, I believe, was in Basingstoke. But again, most of the time, they were up in London working hard and would come back to Hampshire at weekends, you know, for rest.
When Georgina's husband sadly passed away, she downsized into the smaller house on the estate.
She moved into the cottage, which is your chocolate box cover cottage itself.
Nice little house, you know, amongst the trees, by the river.
Her son, Harry, took over running the business and moved into the larger house, as you would when you reach an older age. You don't want the bother of all the dusting.
Georgina seemed happy in her new home. But in January 2008, life in the community changes forever.
Police emergency. This is an emergency. I've just come down to my house. My mother has a cottage 100 yards away. Right. I've got no reply from her. I've come in through her bedroom window, which was unlocked. She's lying on the floor in the kitchen, and it looks to me as if she's been hit over the head. She looks as if she's dead.
OK, calm down for me, sir. What's your name?
My name is Harry Edmonds. I'm her son. I've just walked in. I came in through the window, and I found the house in complete darkness. I've gone through into the kitchen and found my mother's body lying there, and I've been out walking her dogs. This looks like a crime scene to me.
OK, well, try not to touch anything for me.
This is a murder.
OK, just calm down for me, sir. I'll send someone else for you, OK?
Yeah, please, as soon as possible. I'm completely dead. That's a murder.
It was about 6:15. I was at home, just prepping dinner, and my phone rang, and so I answered the phone, and they said, we've got a suspicious death. I said, OK, tell me about that. And they said, oh, it's an elderly woman been found dead in the kitchen, face down by her son. So I jumped in the car, and it was a miserable, wet, cold January night, blowing a gale, driving through these country roads as we are now.
Paul Barton, Detective Chief Inspector at the time, arrives at Georgina's address, which is already swarmed with a significant police presence.
So just as I'm pulling down here, I can see the blue lights sort of flashing in the pitch black. So I know I'm getting close to it. And then I just come around the bend, and there's some more police activity. A police van and a police car, an ambulance, and some tape here, just across the bridge here. So I just pull in where I'm pulling in now, actually. I walked up the drive. It's a short walk up a gravel drive into the cottage. The kitchen door is on the side of the cottage. I just looked in. I could see, sadly, Georgina was lying there face down with a large amount of blood around her, some stab wounds to her neck. So I was satisfied at that point that we did have something that was a suspicious death.
A murder investigation is launched, and police maintain a secure perimeter in and around Georgina's home.
You only get one go
at recovering evidence from a body and one that is already compromised. There will be a lot of discussion about what should be sampled at the scene, what should be done at the scene, what is going to be compromised by another action. So there will be a lot of effort going into preserving as much evidence as possible.
I actually want this road completely closed. And it's one entrance in, one entrance out, but I didn't want anyone else coming across in. I certainly didn't want the press turning up and having a look. And so immediately what we call a wider cordon was put on, and we blocked the road so that we had complete control of the area.
That morning, we went out for a walk, and as we crossed the road where it leads to her house, there was a policeman standing there. There was a car, the road was blocked. And I said, "Can you tell me what's happening on this road? There's been a murder."
When the news broke, it was fairly obvious from the beginning that this was going to be a big story. Neighbours would phone the newsroom and say, "Can you tell us anything about what's going on?"
Everybody was talking about it, wherever you went, everybody in all the shops. And there were police everywhere, and you just wouldn't generally see police presence in that area.
The 15 years that we've been here, we haven't seen or we haven't heard of a murder, except for this one. This is the first one.
I think that was quite worrying because, why? Why was this little old lady killed? What was the reason? So it just seemed very, very random and horrible.
It became very obvious very quickly that this was a murder hunt that was out of the ordinary, shall we say.
So what led to a murder in this peaceful village? And why would someone want to kill a well-loved member of the community?
Police emergency.
This is an emergency. I've just walked into the kitchen
Okay,
and found my mother's body lying there. This looks like a crime scene to me. This is a murder.
In the picturesque village of Brambridge, the close-knit community has woken up to the news that a much-loved 77-year-old grandmother, Georgina Edmonds, has been brutally murdered in her home.
It's extremely grim. My mum was 77 at the time and living with us, not very far away. So, yeah, you don't even want to think about it.
It's gone from being a quiet village scenario to then being sort of on the local news, everybody talking about it, what's happened, that type of thing doesn't happen around here.
With a small community in fear of a killer in their midst, it's down to DCI Paul Barton to address the public.
The Saturday morning I was doing my first media briefing, and it was packed, and it was Sky News Live, BBC Live. It was headline news, it was Midsummer Murders, kind of 77-year-old lady murdered brutally. So the nation were interested and the media were interested.
Under a national media spotlight, Hampshire police are under pressure to work out who would kill Georgina Edmonds and why.
I just start sort of kicking into autopilot. The next thing I'm thinking is, well, who's done this? Who's responsible? Any suspicious incident calls in that area in the last 24 hours? Has the victim been a victim of any other crimes? Is there any sort of domestic violence within the household? What do we know about the rest of the family? What do we know about the neighbours?
Was this a stranger murder? Was this someone, though, that she knew? And in such a small village, how did they get in and out of the cottage without being seen?
With a killer on the loose, the finger of suspicion is on every member of the community.
Everybody asking questions. We had so many people come in the pub at the time. Did you hear anything? Did you see anything? Do you know who it was?
We go out as the media and knock on doors and try to talk to people and find people that would have known her. When you've only got 5 homes to actually knock on the door, the community, they'll be in shock themselves, actually, about it.
With Georgina's son, Harry, too distraught to speak, it was left to neighbours to speculate what had happened. Had someone targeted her because of her wealth?
They had a beautiful house, they had quite a bit of money in the family. And I just remember that, the money, the big house, the jewellery. It was in a dark, secluded area.
There was nothing else there. There was another house, I think, to the right, I seem to remember. But that's it. She was on her own.
Police conduct a thorough search of Georgina's house for clues.
We were exploring what could have happened. Was it burglary that was the motive? Her credit card had been taken. I believe also a Radley handbag was gone. I think a laptop was gone. But there were other items that were there in the kitchen that were quite valuable. There was money out, I believe, that were just left. And that seemed rather strange, that this was a burglary that had gone wrong, that the burglar hadn't taken those fairly obvious items that were there.
Police take a closer look at the crime scene, and one significant thing jumps out. There's no sign of a forced entry.
Was this a cover-up? Was it another motive? And so, therefore, had she been targeted in some other way, and it was a pretend burglary, taking just a few things, when a real burglar would have taken lots of things.
With no sign of a break-in, everyone known to Georgina is under suspicion. Could the local community offer clues as to who Georgina may have let into the house?
Trusting, you couldn't have had anyone more trusting. She was that sort of person. She never disputed things, you know, she just trusted people. And sometimes people are a bit suspicious, but she wasn't that type of person.
She was the sort of person, and I guess this is of her age, that would keep her door unlocked. You know, she would talk to strangers. If someone knocked on the door and asked for directions, she wouldn't be suspicious. Probably even offer them a cup of tea and, you know, spend time with people.
With no obvious break-in, detectives are left to speculate whether this was a random attack by a stranger or by someone closer to home.
Quite often, the last person to see the person alive could be the killer. It is odd that a son comes home and finds their mum dead in a kitchen. I've dealt with other jobs where children have killed parents. You know, they may have been off their face on drink or drugs. There may have been a domestic argument that's then gone too far. He could have had an axe to grind with his mother, and he could have killed his mother, and then he's just made up that he's come in and found her dead.
Police reanalyse the 999 call made by Georgina's son, Harry.
I've just walked in and found my mother's body lying there. This looks like a crime scene to me. This is a murder.
It's a strange call, I have to say. He's very calm, but he says she's dead. I think it's a murder, he says. And I remember, you know, we played that time and time again, and it's gone out in the media as well. And, you know, a lot of people thought that was strange.
Police bring Harry in for questioning to establish his movements in the hours his mother was murdered. He tells detectives he was at work all day and did not return home till 6 p.m.
He was concerned because he hadn't heard from his mother all day, and I think he'd been trying to call her. And he went to the cottage and it was in darkness. Harry's managed to force open the ground floor window, I think into Georgina's bedroom. He climbs in, goes into the kitchen and finds Georgina lifeless on the floor in a pool of blood.
Harry's story is quickly verified. Police are still no closer to establishing who had gained access to Georgina's home. So they release CCTV footage of Georgina the day before her death, which shows her holding a handbag, which is now missing, and urge the public for help.
To be honest, most people were pretty appalled anyway, just the fact that an old lady had been murdered without knowing the detail. And generally, everyone was trying to be as helpful as they possibly could.
It was a huge community thing, and they had big things in the village hall. So everyone got together, they all went out searching. Everybody was sort of part of it. Everybody searched, everyone went and looked, and yeah, all together really as a community.
Despite the community's best efforts, Georgina's handbag isn't found. But post-mortem results help police identify the cause of death. Could this lead to clues as to her attacker?
On one level, the death of Georgina Edmonds pathologically is straightforward. She has been struck on the head with a heavy blunt object. Ultimately, it was identified that that was a marble rolling pin. A heavy weapon, a good sort of thing to use to cause damage. But on top of that, you then have the incised wounds, the cuts to the body, inflicted with a degree of deliberation, and you don't really have defensive type injuries. One conclusion that could reasonably be drawn is that if they're not in a place where they are likely to kill you, that they are an act of torture. There is an attempt to distress somebody and extract information.
Police now believe Georgina was tortured before she died.
It was horrific.
Terrible.
And as more details came out about what the guy had done to her, apparently tortured her, I mean, it got worse and worse.
Eventually, it emerged just the horrible scale of the injuries to Georgina that were allied to trying to find out her PIN number for her credit card.
We established about 5 hours after discovering her body that somebody had attempted to use that CashPoint card at a local ATM. And we feel that they were trying to get the PIN number out of Georgina.
Police trace CCTV from that local Tesco ATM in nearby Eastleigh, only half a mile away from the murder scene, and see someone attempting to take money out.
They attempted to use the machine a couple of times. I think it swallowed up the card and off it went. So we didn't have a facial image of the person using the ATM machine, but we were confident to say it was a man. And in particular, the user of the ATM machine was wearing a thick fluorescent jacket with a hood up. And the person that approached that clearly knew that that camera was there because they took all reasonable steps to avoid being seen, keeping their head down, keeping the hood up, etc.
Despite his face being hidden, detectives now have an image of Georgina's killer, and the search for this person intensifies.
This is probably someone who was local or had local connections with Eastleigh. Have we had any offenders that have been released from prison recently in that area on licence? Have we got any registered sex offenders or violent offenders that are in that area? Luckily for me, the duty detective sergeant happened to know that there was a bail hostel called Elderfield House, which was pretty much at the end of the road from Brambridge leading into Otterbourne Village. It's the sort of place that you wouldn't expect to find in an affluent village like Otterbourne or Brambridge, and there are some unpleasant people there.
Behind those trees is Elderfield.
You can just see the rooftop over there.
These are people that had done time in prison, and after their term was over, they've sent them here.
It was a halfway house, basically.
It's a halfway house.
It was somewhere where they could sort of spend time and sort of rehabilitate and get back into normal life. And they would hang around in groups and get very drunk. And it was not nice. It was quite a bit unsettling.
It is of some concern in that you don't know what's going to happen next.
You would often get some of them escape, or they would then get out and they aren't supposed to be out. Danger, I guess it was described as.
Police question the residents of Elderfield to establish their movements on the night of Georgina's murder.
There were 4 people that were unaccounted for that night. I think 3 had come back late. Within 24 hours or so, we declared 4 people as suspects from Elderfield House. And we arrested them, searched their rooms, brought them back to the police station, forensically examined them, and then put them through the interview process.
After hours of questioning, it soon becomes clear to detectives that 3 of the suspects had clear alibis and are released without charge. But the 4th did not return to Elderfield for 24 hours during the night Georgina was murdered. And his clothing is of particular interest to police.
CCTV showed this fluorescent jacket, which was really key. And in our search in Elderfield House, we established that one of the residents who was unaccounted for on the night was wearing a big fluorescent jacket. He had previous convictions for murder or manslaughter. And so he was of particular interest and excitement to the team at that time.
But police are able to verify the fourth man's alibi, and he is released without charge. And with no suspect or clear motive, fear begins to escalate across the local community.
It's unsettling. It's unknown because the police don't tell you exactly what's happening, especially when they say, well, we haven't found him yet, we're still looking out for him, So where is he?
It was quite scary. My family were saying to me, don't go out on your own at night, don't go out to the car park on your own. It definitely makes you change the way you behave, the way you think. For ages, people didn't go to the garden centre. That was really affected by the whole situation, because I just think people thought it was a dangerous area to go to, so they didn't go there.
They were getting more and more concerned and worried that this is someone still here then, is it? Are we to believe that this is a stranger or someone that was passing through, just happened to pick the cottage, just happened to find that the door was open, going there, carry out this terrible crime, and then just drive away and leave the area utterly and completely, and that's it? Or is it more likely that the perpetrator is still here amongst us?
It's been 1 month since much-loved grandma, Georgina Edmonds, was found murdered in her home in Brambridge, and police are yet to charge anyone for the heinous crime.
It was in the media daily, you know, any newspaper stat you saw it, it was on the news, it was on the radio. We had boards up everywhere, and if you lived in the area as well, you couldn't miss it. Everyone knew what was going on.
I think at the time there was an urgency to get this one done, to get it sorted.
The only sighting detectives have is by a Tesco ATM machine in nearby Eastleigh. And so the investigation to find this man spotted on CCTV escalates.
We knew that Georgina's card had been attempted to be used. Then obviously that, for me, becomes an area of concentration for house to house. So we had police patrols in the area, certainly at the Tesco Express. We wanted to capture anyone that was there at the material time. So we obviously pulled the CCTV from the petrol station itself. We could read all the registration numbers of the cars coming in. And then we had the obvious houses sort of adjacent to Tesco Express and then right opposite. And so I decided that we would focus house to house in that area as well, knocking on doors. Again, good old-fashioned detective work.
And it isn't long before one address catches police attention.
There was a raid on a house that wasn't far from where the cash point had been, where the person in the frame had been using the debit card.
There was a particular address not a million miles away from the ATM machine where a man lived up until the point of around about the 11th of January and then disappeared. The inquiries that we did identified that he was Polish and had gone back to Poland. And he may have also had some previous convictions, so I sent a team out to Poland.
Suddenly, the news story goes international.
We had reports that the police had actually gone out to Poland to carry out inquiries.
There was a lot of media interest in this particular case, and then the media were descending on us, and they would put two and two together and come up with murderer, fled to Poland and all this. You know, got the community kind of excited, if you like, because they were thinking, oh, great, they finally caught that person.
Police question the Polish man regarding his movements on the night Georgina was murdered. Have they finally found their killer?
He was alibied, and also, I think, through DNA as well, we were able to eliminate him from the inquiry.
With the Polish man in the clear, Hampshire police are back in the UK and back to square one. So they release a clearer version of the CCTV footage to the public and suspect the person is a male aged between 16 and 60 with an estimated height of 5'11". The hunt for this man accelerates to new levels.
We wanted DNA swabs from males matching that description to come forward. Our view was, if you've got nothing to hide, come forward.
You can't force people to do that kind of thing, but What this did, of course, was to add to the suspicion in the community. But they would have come forward because feeling, well, if I don't, then suspicion's going to fall on me. I must admit that, in my experience, I've never come across a mass DNA appeal anywhere that I've worked before. It was certainly turning into something that's, well, a modern-day thriller.
More than 2,000 local men have their DNA swabbed, but there are no immediate results, and the case goes cold. Two and a half years later, and Georgina's killer is still at large. But on the 30th of June, 2010, things take a dramatic turn. An arrest is made. And it's a local man. 31-year-old Matthew Hamlin.
We scrambled to find out who this man is. He's got a history of violence, and, you know, he's not a nice guy to know.
Matthew Hamlin was known to police. He'd been known for drug usage and also violence in the past. He had a off-on relationship with a local girl. In fact, he'd had an argument with her and resulted hitting her with an ironing board, and she moved out of the home. He had quite a bad drug habit at that time, using cocaine, and we understand he also racked up numerous debts as a result of his drug usage. And so that kind of fitted the profile of somebody high on drugs, desperate, and probably not really thinking what they're doing.
You can understand that the police would be interested in him. He used to walk his dog along the riverbank there and would know the area quite well. So he fitted in one of the profiles, shall we say, for the police.
But what exactly led to Matthew's arrest?
One particularly interesting subject came to them with a couple of bits of evidence. The first was that despite he denying that he had been in the area on that particular day and time, his phone records were showing that he actually was there.
This person had a mobile phone, and what we could show was that their phone was bouncing off the same cell mast on the afternoon of the 11th of January.
With Hamlin in custody, police waste no time in recording his every word when his mum visits.
The other thing is I might have an alibi for it as well.
What do you mean?
When they first interviewed me, I ain't got a clue where I was. And Sarah got out her diary and she flipped through, looked at the date, and she said, yeah, you was with me.
I can speak to Sarah.
Yeah. See if she's still going to make that.
I think she was trying to be helpful for him. And I guess, you know, if you think about it, you don't want to think your child is responsible for doing such a grave crime. And so I would imagine she was desperate.
But I haven't spoken to them for ages. I haven't fallen out of them, but I ain't spoken to them. So if she's still going to say that or not. But I can't remember it. I was off my head all the time. I was drunk. I don't know what I was doing. I don't know where I was 2.5 years ago. I struggled where I was last week.
It was quite clear in that recording that he was trying to manufacture an alibi at that time that would take him out of the area at the material time when Georgina was murdered.
As well as Hamlin's mobile phone pinging on a nearby mast, linking him to the scene, new evidence comes to light, which police believe is even more conclusive.
The other bit was partial DNA that was found on the rolling pin, and also, I believe, on a small part of her clothing. That was a partial match to this particular subject. Putting the two together, and he came right to the top.
Eventually, the scientists were able to show some components of that mixed profile were 2,600 times more likely to be attributable to Matthew Hamlin. We were fairly confident that Hamlin was responsible.
After a manhunt that lasted years, it seems police have finally found their man. And Matthew Hamlin is charged with Georgina's murder. Matthew pleads not guilty, and 10 months later, the trial begins at Winchester Crown Court.
You're nervous, you're excited, You've got the victim's family up in the gallery. Your QC opens up the case, you hear what's being said, and you sit back and think, that sounds pretty good. You know, if I'm on the jury, I'd be thinking, guilty.
The prosecution lay out a mountain of evidence against Matthew Hamlin. And after a 3-month trial, the jury returns with its verdict.
When the call came through, I remember the news desk saying to me, it's not guilty. At that moment, it was one of those moments in the newsroom where you get that stunned silence.
They don't happen that often. So when they do, and when it's such an important case like that, you can't really describe it. It's just a punch in the guts, you know. Yes, professionally, you're disappointed for yourself, you know, and your team, but it's the family, you know, you really feel for. And, you know, you do question, could we have done more, you know? Did we have the wrong person, you know? Is there somebody out there that's done this that we haven't caught?
And you think about the community. The community had lived with this for 4 years. They believed that the monster amongst them had been caught and was now going to get his just desserts. And now it wasn't. And according to the court, he's not the monster at all. Well, who is the monster?
Despite a 2.5-year manhunt and becoming Hampshire Constabulary's most expansive investigation, Matthew Hamlin has been acquitted of Georgina Edmonds' murder, leaving her family, the community and the police feeling devastated and in shock.
Well, we're back now to square one. The mystery continues. The courts have cleared him. So who is it? Is it my neighbour? Is it my friend? Is it someone in my family? Is it someone I work with?
You always have to be open-minded, and you have to accept that actually Hamlin didn't do it, and there is someone else out there.
With the case unsolved, the possibility of the killer getting away with murder looms over police.
Are the police looking for anyone else? Is the case closed? And the police were quite adamant that the case remained open, that they were carrying on their investigations.
So obviously we have a debrief. We'll meet with counsel as well. We'll speak with the family. We will conduct a review of that investigation to see if there were anything we missed, anything we could have done, mainly because so lessons can be learned, because once somebody's been acquitted, that's it.
Detectives go back to the drawing board and relook at all the evidence they have collated over the years and examine what went wrong.
We spent millions of pounds on this investigation, the most expensive investigations that Hampshire police have ever run, and the forensic budget was through the roof.
Beforehand, they had looked for his DNA on the marble rolling pin, but graphically there was so much of Georgina Edmonds' blood on that blurred everything, and they got just a partial sample. And then from another small part of her clothing, where again it was a partial sample. I mean, you're asking a jury to put someone away for life on the grounds of circumstantial evidence and also partial DNA. It's too cloudy, and I think juries can then look at it and say, can I actually send a man away for life on evidence here which is not the strongest?
Police spend years looking for new techniques to forensically identify a killer. And they eventually come across a recent form of DNA testing called YSTR, which extracts the male DNA profile from a full DNA profile.
It's a simple process, and it's almost sellotape on clothing and points of the body to remove skin cells. So it's fairly early on in the exhibits that we're taking of the left sleeve of Georgina's blouse, which would have had skin cells on there. And so the decision was taken to look at those skin cells and examine them, because we hadn't done so far. We'd done the waistband, but not the sleeve. And then obviously it went for analysis, number crunching, etc. And it came back with a full male profile.
On Thursday, 30th of October 2014, police make an announcement. They have arrested and charged a suspect for the murder of Georgina Edmonds. As a new trial looms, people want to know, who is in the frame? None other than Matthew Hamlin.
This is incredible. They're going to put him back on trial. It wouldn't have been allowed because double jeopardy meant you could not be tried for the same crime in this country. That had only been changed a few years prior to that, which enabled this to actually happen.
Despite the double jeopardy rules changing in 2003 and a new stack of DNA evidence, how did detectives manage to get Hamlin's charge over the line?
It's not an easy thing to do for obvious reasons. The defence argued that it's not new evidence, you had it all along, you just chose not to examine it and find it. But actually, it's not evidence until you've actually turned it into evidence. And that was the ruling of Sir Brian Leveson, who heard that at the Court of Appeal, who then quashed the acquittal and were able to then go for a retrial.
January 2016, exactly 8 years after Georgina's murder, the second trial of Matthew Hamlin begins at Winchester Crown Court. The prosecution lay out all their evidence once again, including their new secret weapon, the YSTR DNA technique.
We're hoping for a better outcome this time.
It's 1 in 26 million, that DNA, that it's not him.
And when you describe that, you know, there's 26 million to 1 is this person, I think it was a fairly easy decision for the jury to make. Layered on top of that was, obviously, he was a local person, violent background, and obviously the phone was bouncing off the mast at the time.
Despite presenting their new evidence in court, there are many in the community who are unconvinced that Matthew Hamlin is the killer. At the time of the second trial, Matthew is a changed man, leaving behind his days of drug taking, working full-time as an electrician and raising his family. And after a grueling 6-week trial, the jury retires to consider the verdict.
When you do get to court and the prosecution and the defence have had their say and the judge has summed up, you still get a bit nervous, even though you just know in your heart of hearts that it's a really, really strong case.
So we can't speculate, we can't talk to people about, well, you know, what do you think this time? Do you think he's going to get off a second time?
On the 23rd of February 2016, the jury return with a verdict.
8 years after Georgina Edmonds, aged 77 years, was found dead at her home in Banbridge, Matthew Hamlin has today been found guilty of her brutal murder.
It was just a sense of relief and just great work, and so many people, bear in mind this investigation had gone on for years really, and so many people have got involved in that investigation. But it was just such a nice feeling.
Throughout this entire investigation, we have been absolutely determined to prove beyond reasonable doubt who committed this horrific crime. After the discovery of new evidence and presenting it to the Court of Appeal, we were able to try Matthew Hamlin again for the murder of Georgina Edmonds. The whole prosecution team were determined to find justice for Georgina, and today that has been achieved.
Being stood there, listening to Harry address the media and just say some really nice words about me and my colleagues and Hampshire Police and all the work that we've done to get justice for the family. So yeah, just a great feeling.
The entire team of police officers, police staff, prosecution barristers, forensic scientists and colleagues from the Crown Prosecution Service have been absolutely dedicated to putting together the best possible case that could be put before the court and the jury. Every moment has been worth it to see justice finally served and the killer of Georgina Edmonds behind bars. Thank you.
With Matthew Hamlin finally behind bars, the question that still puzzles the community is why would he want to end the life of Georgina Edmonds so brutally torturing her before battering her to death.
Who can say, and it's difficult for me to speculate. Well, we know now from the court case, although he's never admitted it, that he was short of money, that he had walked along the riverbank and he had found his way in the cottage, whether that was just by pure chance, whether he had seen her walking her dogs and had known that she was gone there and she was a vulnerable old lady. Sadly, whether he would have known or not that the door was left open when he went in. He had tortured her to reveal the number for her debit card by stabbing her something like 27 times and then just leave her there, tie her up or something like that. But then it all got, who knows what it is. But I think what we can tell is that he is a pretty evil, nasty guy who will spend 30 years in prison.
And after 8 long years of fear, can normal life return for the local community?
It's so close to reality for us here that, you know, it's traumatic for all of us in the village.
They're vulnerable too. You know, so trusting. I know we all felt very, very sorry for her. Yeah, very sorry.
It's just the truth, and it's high time you faced it.
Perfect.
She's a friend of yours?
She was until about a minute ago. But she owns the place, so we ought to be nice. Carl, look, before we get any further, this probably won't work. I'm sure you're a decent guy, but bottom line, I don't know that I want this with anyone.
This?
A relationship.
Oh, yeah. How about lunch?
We both want lunch, I hope.
Yes, God, yes.
This is Carlisle Burke. I can't take your call right now, but it's important to me. Leave a message. Carlisle?
40-something. Newly single, older doesn't always equal wiser, but I like to think I'm making progress. Your profile, I liked it. It did not say what you do, though.
I'm the chief of police.
No, you're joking.
No. Yeah, that's why I kept it vague, because you don't exactly come right out.
No, I get that. Lonely top cop, new in town, seeks soulmate. Chief of police. And no offense, you guys have a difficult job. There's plenty of good cops too, yada yada, but of all the types I ever imagined myself with, your turn.
Types?
Point taken.
Wow.
Do you always do that? The Sphinx.
That's an interesting question. Do you always do that? The self-sabotage?
Oh, hell yeah.
Yeah? Well, it's charming. Cheers.
Corporal Yen?
Yes, that's me.
Excellent. I'm Isabella.
Nice to meet you.
Come on, through here. And this is where it all happens, sort of. Sergeant Sokolowski, Corporal Yen, you'll meet all these other guys later.
Sergeant?
Welcome. Heard a lot of really good things. The detective who took down a cartel in Philly.
Yeah, well, I was part of the team.
Smart and humble. Resent her already.
Is Chief Alberg...
The boss is out to lunch. That's not a warning. In fact, he's totally the opposite. He's literally having lunch. This is Officer Kendrick.
From Philly. Sixers fan.
Oh, all the way.
Andy.
Edwina.
And this will be your desk. The lockers are through there. So, how do you like Gibson so far?
First 10 minutes, not bad.
It's small and sometimes weird, but give it a chance. I bet you'll love it.
Tell you the truth, I didn't know they still had librarians. I mean, obviously, there's still books, and I like books, but somehow I don't think of libraries.
What do you think about, Carl?
You know, my daughters read.
Okay.
Yeah, 2 of them. Well, more like 1.5. Steph's the eldest. She's out to university. She still talks to me, but Holly's 16, so...
What'd you do to her?
I failed, I guess.
Holly's with her mom?
Mm-hmm.
Divided loyalties? I can say something glib and stupid.
Oh, that'd be good.
Yeah.
How about you?
My loyalties? Few, but fierce.
You've never been married?
I got close once. I mean, close-ish.
Here we go, fish and chips. And a burger.
Thank you.
Enjoy.
I'd love to see you again, if that'd be okay.
Go ahead and call.
Okay. Yeah. What?
Did someone notice anything? A vehicle sounds from the house.
You got it, Corporal?
Corporal, good to see you.
Sergeant Sokolowski's inside.
Fill me in.
Vic's name was Carlisle Burke, 85 years old. Guy who found him isn't much younger, George Wilcox. Says he just dropped by to say hello.
First homicide, kid? We'll get used to it. Some first day, huh, Corporal?
Single blow, looks like. No forced entry.
Doesn't look like anything's missing, but... Chief?
Tidy room. No obvious signs of a struggle. Blood splatter minimal. Somebody's library books. Okay, rest of the house.
Yep. I think he's been saying Tom. It's probably his name. He must have bought it today, or else someone else gave it to him.
Maybe Wilcox brought it?
No, he says he's a gardener, not a fisherman.
Mr. Wilcox, I'm Chief Alberg.
So you're the boss, are you? They said you wanted to ask me some questions.
You okay?
There's going to be one hell of a hullabaloo once people figure out what's happened.
I'd like you to show me how you found him. Can you do that?
I'll do what I can.
Was the door open when you got here?
No, I knocked a couple of times, no answer. So I tried the doorknob, wasn't locked. I decided to go in and see how he was. He is 85, you know. Was 85.
Was Mr. Burke in ill health?
How the hell should I know? 85 years old, that age. The whole bag of bones is wearing out fast. At any minute, something essential could just let go on you.
Yeah, no, I know the feeling myself some days. So, you came inside?
I think I shouted something. I dropped my books. I didn't Well, I wasn't thinking all that clearly.
And then?
Called 911.
Was he a good friend of yours, Mr. Wilcox?
We knew each other.
You came here fairly often, though?
Not really, no.
Look around. Tell me if you see anything unusual.
That's unusual.
Anything else?
Look, I don't know. It's just, I'm sorry.
Couldn't find anything.
We'll need your fingerprints for comparison.
Now?
Sid, let's get Mr. Wilcox a ride.
Yep.
Expect a phone call. We'll ask some more questions about Mr. Burke, who his friends were, that sort of thing.
What about my library books?
Oh, I'll have to keep those. They're evidence.
For what?
One more question. Do you know anyone who might have wanted Mr. Burke dead?
No, I didn't. I'd like to go home now, if you wouldn't mind.
Of course.
This way, Mr. Wilcox.
Hey, guys. Give us the room.
What's missing? The balance is off.
Balance.
Imagine you're looking at a painting, both ends, there and there. What do you see?
Nothing.
Yeah, that's my point. Doesn't it look like something should be there?
Sure, yeah, possibly, if you're like one of those people who kind of wants everything in order.
Well, look at the room. If they were valuable, we got a motive, maybe. Let's find out about the fish.
Oh, yeah, I'm already on
Find
that.
out who was clearing deadfall. The fresh sawdust out back. You didn't notice? Eyes wide, Sid. There'll be no stopping you. Good.
Other hand, please. Thank you.
不用客气.
你会说话吗?
Only a few words. I'm sorry, that was presumptuous of me. As far as I know, both your parents were born and raised in Portland.
Philadelphia, actually. But my yaya's from Shanghai.
Myra, that's my wife. We both love to travel. Hong Kong twice, but never Shanghai.
Maybe that's your next trip.
You're old before you know. At some point, the walls start closing in on you. Then it's done. Finita la commedia.
text, don't call, but I'm old. You speak to Holly?
Well, texted. Like normal people. I don't think she hates you or anything. It's a break. She has a boyfriend. I think she just changed her mind and was afraid to tell you that.
Afraid?
Dad, you expect a lot from yourself and from other people. Sometimes that's hard to deal with.
I don't expect.
Yeah, but you do. I don't care. I'm as bad as you are, but Holly's different. So, how is the Sunshine Coast? As good as you remember?
You know, it is like I remember. Some of it, anyway. Sometimes I look at a view and I saw that when I was a kid. It's starting to feel like home.
Does this mean you've met someone?
No, nothing like that. We had lunch.
That's amazing.
But the coast itself, something about small towns, you get to be who you are.
Go outside the box. Follow your tinfoil hat hunches.
Yeah, go do my job. Thank you very much. Investigate without 6 layers of bureaucracy. I think I may get myself a sailboat.
Ooh, very nice. So, what's her name? The one you haven't met.
Cassandra.
So you saw George Wilcox walk past?
Yeah, about 2:30. I don't know if he saw me on the deck. He's a good fella, George.
And your grandson? Riley, is it? Seems we missed him yesterday.
Well, he keeps himself busy, helping people out. Look, he didn't see nothing.
Riley Erlinson.
No, come on. He's just a kid. Just.
I'm Corporal Yen.
Finley holds out her grandfather's old handmade hunting map as Tyler and Caitlin gather round. The legend says that the elder tree is more than 400 years old, but this tree is special.
Cassandra.
George, hi.
Hi.
What? Oh, my goodness. It is beautiful. Thank you.
You're welcome. You know, I really love saying your name. Cassandra Lee has such a wonderful lilt to it.
There.
Met someone, have you?
Well, had lunch with.
Great. Don't get me wrong, independence is a fine thing, only highly overrated.
You looking for something in particular?
A good mystery, maybe?
A mystery? You? Okay, well, yeah, it's a great choice. The Wednesday Night Book Club's discussing the modern crime novel, and Dostoevsky comes up again and again.
Spoiler alert. Raskolnikov confesses. I was the one who found the body. Carlisle Burke.
Oh, my God.
That's the reason I'm here without my books. The cops kept them.
Never mind the library books. How are you doing?
I was right next to him. The corpse. As close as I am to you now.
George, that's awful.
You know, you're more than welcome to come over for a visit. Sometime. Anytime. It's been a while.
Yeah.
We could have rosehip tea from my greenhouse.
Okay.
Good.
You weren't keen to talk to us. You can understand how that might look.
Like I got nothing to say to you.
It might. On the other hand...
The fish guy. Talk to him instead of hassling innocent people.
Fish guy.
The cops were asking, who sells fish? There's a guy. Crappy old van with rainbows, going door to door.
That's good to know.
He's a weird looking dude. A black guy. Sorry, a person of color. Can I leave now?
She's a good hire, boss.
Yeah, she's smart.
Asian.
You're a good man, Sid. Keep evolving. That's what my daughter keeps telling me.
The brilliant one?
Yeah, Steph.
Mine keep telling me to lose weight. Oh, 5 of them.
Maybe the other old guy saw him.
George Wilcox, you mean?
Yeah, he went by around 12:30.
Your grandpa said 2:30.
No, my grandpa was asleep.
He's hiding something.
He has a record, breaking and entering.
Where are we with the fish guy?
Well, looking harder as of now. It's a robbery gone wrong.
Okay, well, so what was stolen?
Guy gets spooked, doesn't have time to grab everything.
Ask around the senior center, see where that leads you. I want to know if the victim had friends, visitors. Maybe someone knows if he had valuables in there.
You probably had cleaners?
Good one. Assuming it was a robbery, it'd be worth keeping an eye on the place.
There's a high-end security monitoring system. Burke just didn't have it activated.
Well, let's activate it. I want to know if anyone else saw George Wilcox at 12:30.
Contact info. Carlisle Burke's sister.
Thanks, Isabella. I'm really sorry about your loss.
My brother was 85 years old. We don't live forever.
Well, the circumstances, though, that must be disturbing to you.
Homicide, so I understand.
When will you be coming out, Miss Ridings?
To Gibson's. Oh, I don't think I'll be coming out. You're a long way from Chicago.
Well, the funeral, settling your brother's affairs. You're his next of kin.
Oh.
I take it the two of you were estranged.
Estrangement implies a previous affection. He didn't like me. I didn't like him.
Who was close to your brother?
Who else have you talked to?
A man named George Wilcox?
I remember George Wilcox. Yeah. A great, tall fella. He was Carlisle's best man.
At your brother's wedding, you mean?
Oh, God, what a wedding. And that long, best man with his even longer face, seething.
Afternoon, Mr. Wilcox.
Don't you ever wear a uniform? No uniforms? No police car? How am I supposed to take you seriously?
This help?
Got a gun?
You think I'll need one? Your wife?
Myra. She died last March.
You still miss her?
Now that, right there, is what's wrong with all you cops. In a nutshell. You still miss her. Jesus wept.
Audrey, your sister.
So, any suspects?
Oh, not really. An unknown person went into Mr. Burke's house armed with a blunt instrument.
Why the hell would Carlisle have let him in?
That's an interesting question. Maybe the killer used something that he found inside the house.
It's probably out in the middle of the ocean by now.
You can be a very irritating man, Mr. Wilcox. Anybody ever tell you that? I don't suppose you dropped in on Carlisle twice yesterday.
And why would I do that? You're here for a reason, I presume?
Your fingerprints were all over the living room.
I was somewhat, how shall I say, discombobulated.
Right. Let's not waste any more time with this cantankerous old man act. I know Carlisle Burke was your brother-in-law, so start talking.
We met years ago. We both taught at uni on the mainland. I taught Russian history. Carlisle taught music.
Yeah?
I never trusted him. Every year, Myra and I, we'd have this Christmas party. And that's where he met her, Audrey.
Did you tell Audrey you didn't trust him?
Myra and I had to leave for Germany right after the wedding. I had a job there, teaching. 2-year exchange.
And that was?
76, 77. That's when Audrey was killed. Car accident. After the funeral, I didn't see him again for 35, 40 years. Not until he showed up here.
You say you never trusted him. But you never really got to know him. So, maybe you were all wrong about Carlisle.
You may be right about that. Yeah, that could be true.
Something Burke's sister said at the wedding. Long, sad faces, seething.
That was, what, 50 years ago?
Whoever smashed Carlisle Burke's skull, that was a crime of passion.
I've been back for 5 years now. My mom likes my brother better, to be honest. But he has a partner and 3 kids, so.
Is that why you came back here? To look after her?
Oh, God, no. But to be closer. And I love the coast. I grew up here.
And?
What is this, an interrogation?
Oh, I thought we were divulging.
Well, divulge.
Big city police work. I was taking its toll. My marriage, 20 years. I'm not sure I ever saw it coming. I looked up and it had all fallen apart. It's my fault. I stopped noticing. I'd always been good at that. How's that?
So what were you looking for when you signed on to a dating site?
You? This is my daughter's idea. One who still talks to me.
So basically, I'm a shot in the dark.
How about you?
I wasn't meeting anyone, and men seem to find me disconcerting.
Please disconcert me.
Well, I signed on with the hope of finding a pleasant, not unattractive, courteous male person with whom I can have adequate conversation and spectacular sex.
How's the conversation?
So far, it's not bad. I have a friend who lives up the road.
Audrey?
No, it's me. George, are you all right?
Yes, sure. Oh, fine. The sun was in my eyes.
I hope you don't mind.
Is he the one?
Is now a bad time?
No. It's all good. It's all good.
Should have called before showing up. I'm sorry.
Since when did you become friends with the police farce?
Not the entire farce, just Carl.
I see you've been digging out there, Mr. Wilcox. Even at this time of year, it's impressive. I'm thinking about planting a garden myself.
Are you now?
You should see George's garden in June. It is spectacular. The hydrangeas are blue and then purple.
My mother used to grow geraniums, sunflowers, and hollyhocks. There's an amazing sense of grace to be found with gardening. That is, as long as you can handle the responsibility. It's hard to tell if your interest is genuine, Mr. Alberg. Hard to know if you're that sort of man. Never mind those.
It's my pleasure. You changed something?
Nope.
Something's different.
I ought to know. I'm the one who lives here.
Carl?
Good night, Mr. Alberg.
Well, that was nice. It's been a while since I've had an evening out.
That was an evening out. You must not get out much.
Go for a nightcap somewhere?
It is late.
If you say it's okay with you, I like to
call me.
The one for you. Be there, hold you tight. Love you right through the night. If it's okay with you, if it's okay.
I drink single malt.
You come to the right place. Yeah, I haven't finished unpacking.
Yeah, how long have you been here?
3-4 months. I'm busy with work.
Uh-huh.
That's my mom. I mean, not her, obviously, but her work.
Shirley Allberg. She was just starting to get noticed when she passed.
Hey, check me out.
Librarians call it research. I'm sorry about your mom.
I was 16, so yeah, I'm pretty much over it.
Where is that?
That is Half Moon Bay.
What?
Mm-hmm. My mom stayed here a few times. I came here with her once, years ago. I was 9.
And you camped on the beach while your mom painted?
Kind of, yeah.
Oh, you are such a bohemian.
Mm-hmm.
And now you're the chief of police.
Surprises the heck out of me, too, sometimes.
What about your dad? Did he ever come with you guys?
Oh, no. I never had one. Yeah. Just me and my mom, far back as I can recall. My mom really loved it here. Something she said about the place, it has a special kind of peace. It heals. Sometimes you need that, you know.
Yeah, I do.
Yeah, maybe that's why I'm back. Trying to reconnect or something.
Carl, do you have a cat?
Possibly. Yeah. Felix. That's what I call him anyway. He sort of disappeared. But now the food's getting eaten, so.
You said you had single malt.
Yeah. Guys say all kinds of stuff. Evening, George. What are you doing out there, George? Broke quite the distance, didn't you? Had to get out past the shelf.
Don't know what you're talking
The
about.
murder weapon, George, the one you buried and then dug up. You chucked them both or just the one you bashed his head in with? Doesn't matter, because I'm going to find them.
Good. You look for whatever you damn well please. I'm going to bed.
Oh, you're a determined man, George. Well, so am I. I'll have the sea search people with me. Underwater drone, side scan, sonar, state of the art. There's nothing those guys can't find.
You don't frighten me.
I just thought there might be something you'd like to tell me.
Well, you thought wrong, Sonny. I don't have anything to tell you, you understand? Nothing.
Morning, boss. You wanted to see us?
It's the old guy.
George Wilcox?
He's dumped a murder weapon. There's a shelf 100 yards offshore, all the way across that stretch of coast. Burke's place is here. Wilcox is here. If he's smart, the old bastard rode out past it. The old bastard is smart.
Last night? I mean, why?
Something to do with the sister.
Yeah, but we still...
Of course, we'll need a motive. But he did it, Sid. I was pretty convinced yesterday, now I know.
I'll get someone to look through the security footage from the house.
Okay, and I need to know if anybody else saw George Wilcox go past that house.
Carl Ulberg. Look at you. Help you?
It's a real old timer, this guy.
Won't eat. Dried birdseed, whole grain bread.
No, you need to give him some mango. Maybe a slice of peach.
Seriously?
Yeah. So I hear you folks have been looking for me. Derek Farley. Yeah, I sold a trout up the road. I swear to God, man, I don't know.
Just tell me what time you got there, what you saw.
9:30, maybe 10 a.m. But I rang that bell and he opened the door.
Did you see anyone with him? Anyone coming or going?
No one.
Did he say anything?
Thanks for the fish, something like that. No, wait. No, he said he'd invited a friend to lunch.
Did he mention a name?
Just an old friend.
Invited him to lunch.
Mm-hmm.
Thanks, Mr. Farley. You've been helpful.
Really?
Yeah, very. Semper Fi.
Desert Storm. I moved here 20 years ago. Met my wife. Better way to live.
Mrs. Harris, we appreciate your help.
A tragedy. What a tragedy. Poor Mr. Burke.
Yeah.
I cleaned his house for years, you know, like clockwork, every second Saturday afternoon.
What we need to do is compile a list, anything of value that may have been in the house.
Because robbery was the motive.
Let's say we're doing our due diligence.
Well, he had a fair bit. Silverware and china, some old antiques. Of course, people love to say antique when they really mean old.
Mrs. Harris, have you ever seen one of these?
Trench art, sure. Artwork made from artillery shells. This is really good. Bit of an artist yourself.
Think carefully now. Did Carlisle Burke
Two of them. There and there.
You sure?
Ever since I've been cleaning his house. But they're not really valuable, though. You buy them online.
No, yeah. Thank you, Mrs. Harris. Thank you.
Oh, careful.
Oh, scene of the crime. Yes.
It's probably out in the middle of the ocean by now.
So, we went for a walk, visited a friend, and then walked some more. Okay, promising start. He dropped me off at my car, and then I followed him back to his place. Shut up! He's an artist, who would have thought? Okay, never mind that. He's actually very good. Artistically. And no, before you ask, he did not ask to paint my portrait. No. I am late for work.
Okay, Cass, this is great. It is, whether you want to admit it or not. Be happy.
Thank you.
So, is it just his hand?
Okay, bye, Phil.
Boss, that old accident report from Bellingham, Burke's wife. Single vehicle. Turns out, driving too fast, just went off the road. Second page is the outsider's report. They gave her the works, apparently. George Wilcox insisted. Death due to injuries sustained in the crash. Also, there may have been some old fractures that hadn't set, and possibly some new ones, but the rest of it was too busted up to know. Anything from the sea search guys? Big ocean.
Yeah, well, I don't care if they find anything. He can see them from his window every time he looks out.
Okay, just hear me out. Just devil's advocate. Let's say the old guy did just go out for a row. I had an uncle slipped a gear, stopped wearing pants.
Yeah. Everyone confesses shit, sooner or later, to somebody.
George, did something hurt? Does your heart hurt?
No, it isn't that.
I am going to take you to a doctor.
No. No doctors.
Okay, no doctors. Come on, let me take you home. You gonna be okay?
Fine. Thank you for everything.
What are they doing?
Their job. I'm going away, Cassandra. Soon.
Going away? Why?
To be with my daughter.
But your garden.
I don't deserve it anymore. I just can't stomach the thought of dying where Carlisle died. Being buried where he's buried.
But Myra's buried here too. He's dead now. Why do you still hate him so much?
I've done a terrible thing, Cassandra. And I need to atone. At first I wanted to give myself up, but then I thought, prison? No, I can't. I can't spend the last days of my life behind bars. Not for him.
George, what am I supposed to do with this?
Do whatever you need to do.
Oh, hey, Cassandra.
Give me a minute.
Sure, we could keep going, but it's more than 100,000 square yards of ocean. There's rocks all over the bottom, some as big as a truck.
Keep going.
Until
I tell you to stop.
Well, the amazing disappearing detective. I've heard about guys sneaking out in the middle of the night, but from your own house?
I was going to suggest dinner, but today's getting away from me. Maybe on the weekend or something? Cassandra?
I'd like to see you today. It doesn't have to be for long.
What's up?
I saw police boats on the water.
Took a notion there might be a weapon out there.
And was there? There he is, the Sphinx. It was quite the experience this morning, waking up alone in your house with bits of you lying around, hanging on the walls.
I know. I'll get the unpacking finished.
You're an artist too, not just your mom. I went into the room. Those paintings, they're amazing.
And personal.
So is waking up in someone else's bed. Not what I would have expected from you, but take it seriously. You're good.
How's your friend George Wilcox?
My God. Are those a policeman's eyes?
In my eyes, I'm a policeman.
Why? Are you a policeman?
Because I'm good at the job.
I can imagine.
And I like it.
That's not an answer, though. Why do you like it?
I like figuring things out, solving things. I like serving and protecting. I know, walking cliche. I thought so too, till my daughters were born.
And what about justice?
Oh, justice isn't up to me, thank God.
Thank God.
The law lets you know where you stand.
I don't think that George is doing very well, to be honest. Yeah, I came by the library today.
What do you have to say for himself?
We just talked.
You said you wanted to meet. Well, what's up?
I had a really nice time last night.
Me too.
I should get back to work.
Yeah, Sid, I'm on my way.
Already did the living room, kitchen, and bathroom, Chief. Also the tool shed, no joy.
Guy stuff.
Yes, sir.
Tools, junk. What's out of place?
Thing is, Chief, if we had a better sense of what we were looking for, that might help.
Well, something that should be there but isn't. Something that shouldn't be here but is.
Right. Right. Big picture first, and details.
Mm-hmm. That.
Puzzle box. Oh, yeah, you loved those.
I can't live in fear, Carlisle. I won't. Never again. May 15th, 1978.
If you raise a hand to me again...
You're George Wilcox. You've always suspected.
Yeah, but you wait 40 years and then you kill him.
He did it, Sid.
Okay, but without a confession, what are the odds we're going to get him?
Then I'll get a confession. I'd like you to come with me, Mr. Wilcox.
Oh, going downtown, are we? Thought maybe you'd come to say goodbye.
One of us going somewhere?
She didn't tell you? I'm going to Montreal.
I can't let you do that.
Why not? You've got nothing on me. It's all circumstantial. I'm not even a suspect. I'm a person of interest, and as free as a bird.
Speaking of birds, Carlisle left you his parrot. Sometimes it's harder than you'd believe to kill someone. You bash away, they just refuse to die.
You're speaking from personal experience?
Sometimes it's just one little smack. He invited you for lunch.
Now, why would he have done that?
You tell me. Maybe because it was the anniversary of Audrey's death. Maybe Carlisle figured time was short. 85 years old. Like you said, George, wearing out fast. There were things he wanted to say. Problem is, he said them. How am I doing so far, George? See, I don't think you came here planning to kill him. But the man just wouldn't shut up. Would he, George? started talking about your sister.
I'm warning you.
Audrey was broken long before I met her.
That is the truth, and it's time you faced up to that for your own sake.
Shut up! Saying things you couldn't stand to hear. So he grabbed something.
Poor Audrey would have been better off if she'd never had a brother.
He just wanted to make him stop.
She'd have been better off. You never tried.
And all of a sudden, there he is. Lying dead.
With his eyes open. I know. Because I found the body.
Talk to me, George. You don't need to carry this.
You miserable cops. You have no idea what I carry around. I remember coming in the back door. I could see him in the living room.
Sitting on the chair?
Standing. Beating her with a razor strap.
Carlisle Burke?
My stepdad. It started when we were 14, 15. He'd beat my twin sister every time he went on a bender. I'd hit him with anything I could get my hands on. He'd just pick me up and throw me across the room. You've probably heard all this before, haven't you, Mr. Wahlberg? A man with your experience. One day on the way home, I heard Audrey's screams all the way to the top of the road. I wanted to kill him. I ran down to where his truck was parked, grabbed the shotgun off his rack. I fired a shot in the air. Get the hell out of here, you miserable son of a bitch. He was too far away to grab the gun and too drunk to think straight. So he turned tail and stumbled back towards his truck. My mother ran after him, yelling at him not to drive, that she was sorry, and begging him to take her with him. He fishtailed across the yard, clipping the gate. As he turned onto the upper road, I said to no one in particular, if there is a God in heaven, I hope he drives the two of them off the bloody cliff. Sometime that evening, two cops showed up. They told us our father's truck had been forced off the road by a tractor trailer. It had flipped over the guardrail and plunged into the ocean. So, there is a God. I failed my sister, Mr. Alberg, and I might just as well have killed both my parents. That's it. I have nothing more to say to you.
Is she here?
That way.
Your friend says he's leaving. He's surprised you didn't tell me.
I assume that we're talking about him.
You have something to tell me? He did it. He did it, you know that.
I'm not sure.
Do you have
what-
any idea how serious this is?
Pretend I don't, Carl. Pretend I'm an idiot.
If you're withholding information...
Is that what I am to you, a source?
Oh, Cassandra.
How many possible sources do you screw in the course of an...
A man is dead!
Do not... Don't shout at me. Carl, listen. If George Wilcox had told me that he committed a crime, I'd have looked in the legal section and I'd have found that a confession like that isn't admissible evidence. Even if he said the words.
Yeah, well, you might want to look again.
It is hearsay. It wouldn't have mattered what I said.
Might have mattered to me.
Carly is an old man. He is giving up everything he loves. He is no danger to anyone. Is it really so cut and dried for you? Is it really so damned clear?
No. But I don't make the rules and I don't get to break them.
Well, I wonder how you carry it, Detective, the weight of your own integrity.
Yeah.
Attention all passengers. Please return to your vehicle as the ferry is about to unload. Please return to your vehicle.
I have enough to press charges, George. Put it all together, there's motive, opportunity, means. You take care now.
Everything will be okay. Feel me. Everything will be fine. Heal me. Everything will be okay. Feel me. Everything will be fine. Heal me. Everything will
Dear
be
Mr.
okay.
Alberg, I understand you asked my doctor about the state of my health, which he refused to divulge. It would have been simpler to have asked me. Yes, I am dying, if that's of any consequence. I can't say I'm surprised, and definitely not dismayed. I never liked this life all that much anyway. First of all, I'm writing to say thank you. It was kind of you to let me see those letters. It must have been a frustrating time for you. I know how much you cops like to get your man and all that crap. Just think how much harder it might have been if I'd planned the whole thing. Still, you did get your man in the end. Yes, Mr. Alberg, I killed Carlisle Burke. There's my confession, signed by my dying hand. You can go ahead and close your case now. Finita la commedia. P.S. I like you, Mr. Alberg, in spite of everything. And I know Cassandra cares for you a great deal. I'd be heartbroken if I thought I'd spoiled that.
I received a letter.
Same here. After all that.
Yeah? George only outlived Carlisle Burke by 3 weeks. How you been?
You've been fine. Thanks, you.
I don't suppose you'd want a kitten. Felix came back.
He got himself pregnant?
Yeah, go figure.
How many?
6.
He told me what you did. Those letters. That was very kind.
I might have done the same if I'd been in your position.
I might have handled things differently. So what did he say to you in his letter?
He told me not to screw it up with you. Anyway.
Carl, I'd have to see the kittens first.
I'll check with Felix. See when's convenient.
Okay. Well, you know where to find me.
Mình cũng khá là thích ăn dâu tây nhưng mà mình ăn ở đây nó toàn bị chua thôi. Chỗ mình nó không chuyên trồng dâu tây ấy. Mình đã tô xong quả dâu màu hồng đậm rồi nha. Bây giờ mình sẽ quay lại để sửa cái quả dâu màu hồng nhạt của mình, bởi vì mình thấy nó tô chưa được đẹp cho lắm ấy. Mình sẽ tô đè lên lại một lớp nữa để cho cái màu của nó được đều hơn nha.